Okay, good morning, Commissioner Ed Rothstein. It is Thursday, June 1st. I hope everyone had a good and healthy long weekend and ready to get back to business. Before we do get back to business, as always, let's stand for Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We have a handful of things to get through. We have a couple of proclamations towards the end of our priority carol. So why don't we start with what's on our mind? Commissioner Figliotti, what's on your mind?
Thank you very much, Commissioner Rothstein. So last weekend I had the really exciting opportunity to visit Union Bridge for their annual Dream Big Union Bridge Duck Derby. Over 1,000 ducks were launched in two separate races down Little Pipe Creek. Union Bridge Councilwoman and County Development Review Technician Sherry Thompson, who's heavily involved with the event and group, was there on hand. And the proceeds from the Duck Derby not only benefit Dream Big Union Bridge, but also Wreaths Across America. And as we know, that's coming up in December. So this past weekend, I had the honor of speaking at the New Windsor Memorial Day ceremony that was capably hosted by Mayor Neil Roop and attended by members of Boy Scout Troop 582. I also had the really awesome opportunity to meet New Windsor resident Angelica Prestia, who personally volunteers throughout the year to maintain that memorial. She does everything from pulling weeds to painting the planters, and you can see how beautiful that memorial is. I also wanted to take a brief moment to apologize to the residents of Pleasant Valley. Due to a scheduling mistake, I missed the opportunity to attend their Memorial Day celebration on Sunday. I take total responsibility for that, and I apologize from the bottom of my heart, and I'm looking forward to attending next year. On Monday, I had the honor of speaking at the Memorial Day ceremony in Memorial Park in Tawnytown, which is well hosted by newly elected Mayor Christopher Miller. Members of the City Council were on hand for that, including Councilwoman Judy Fuller, who personally volunteers to maintain their war memorial down to painting the plaques. So this picture here is really awesome. So during the ceremony, Mayor Miller presented a state citation from Delegate Boucher to Mr. Fred Steinwedall, who at 94 years old is Tawnytown's oldest living veteran. The guy is a class act. He's a good guy. He's a gentleman. Mr. Steinwedall enlisted in 1946 at the age of 18, served in the Army Air Force, married his wife Janity, and had a family thereafter. It really was an honor to meet this gentleman. Of course, I was also able to participate in the parade through Tawnytown, where our awesome delegate Chris Tomlinson and his awesome wife Molly also made an appearance. And there you can see newly elected Mayor Miller on the far left, newly elected Councilman Chris Tillman to his left, Councilwoman Judy Fuller, Delegate Tomlinson, myself, and newly elected Councilman Jim McCarron. And then this past Wednesday, and I'll let others speak about this, I had the honor of joining my fellow, and there's Councilwoman Diane Foster in that last picture. Wednesday, I had the honor of joining some of my fellow commissioners in bidding farewell to certain members of the Board of Elections, and again, I'll let them go into that. And also as a brief reminder that it is carnival season for our volunteer fire companies. Union Bridge's Fireman's Carnival is going on from today through this weekend. So if anybody is able to get out to any of these carnivals, I strongly recommend doing it. It's really an awesome community event, but it's also the lifeblood of a lot of these volunteer companies. They absolutely depend upon community participation in these carnivals, and that's how they're able to afford equipment and maintenance and all these different things in order to help safeguard the public. And that is it from me for today.
Thank you. Commissioner Kyler.
Yes, thank you. On a personal note, this past Sunday over the holiday weekend, I had 2 grandchildren confirmed at church, and it was just great. Not just them, but the other children, young adults that were being confirmed, and the families, and it's just great. Hampstead Memorial was Monday, and a great crowd. They closed the street, so we spilled out onto the street, and unfortunately Hampstead Police had to remind us that they eventually had to open the street and we should probably get out of the way. But it went great. The Board of Elections, that went great. John Woodley couldn't be there due to some family issues, and I'm going to meet him and make sure he gets his paperwork. And then you mentioned carnivals, you mentioned a bunch of other things. Graduations have started. We all got to attend the community college graduation that were available and could go to it, and that was great. Last night was Gateways, which is they're a smaller group, so they can do some things the other graduations cannot, and it makes it really special. They have each graduate introduced, come up on the stage with a faculty member who speaks for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, on how they did throughout the process. It was very personable, and it's interesting because some of the students, I think, almost appear nervous on stage, but when you think about it, the average graduate in Carroll County has about 30 seconds on the stage. These guys had maybe up to 2 minutes, so it makes it a really interesting graduation. They do a great job with that school and all our schools. And then for Chris Swam and our other guys, I need to say I love Carroll County. I love that we're recognizing some veterans today. I think they had to put that into the last meeting because I didn't say it, and I'm not sure I trust them with dubbing things and adding things, nor with some of their photos. I think it all leads to blackmail eventually.
You
But
need to keep them very close to you.
Trust me, they
But,
already
yeah.
had a folder on each one of us.
and nice seeing you guys sitting in the back, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. I think I just had my photo taken. Watch what you ask for.
And be
I'm done.
careful with your hands where they go. So, Commissioner Gordon. what's
Thank
your
you. Well, first on Monday, I attended the 156th annual Memorial Day Parade in Westminster. Very heavily attended as always. Was great to see everybody turn out for that. We were very fortunate to have Troop 2007 as well as a number of other scouts, and also the Westminster Roadrunners joined in to assist in carrying the American flag that has been seen for decades previously with Troop 381. So it was nice to see that tradition continued, and very happy to see that. Also on Memorial Day, I attended the memorial service at the Westminster Cemetery following the parade, and it was an honor to meet Brigadier General Burkhead and talk to her briefly, as she also was one of the guest speakers at the event. Yesterday, as Commissioner Kyler had mentioned, Commissioner Kyler, Commissioner Vigliotti, Commissioner Rothstein, and I were in attendance at the Board of Elections recognition event. It was quite a testament to the three outgoing gentlemen. Griff Manahan had served 20 years on the Board of Elections, and as a volunteer position, I thought that was a true testament to his concern and care for Carroll County. Harvey Tegler was there for 8 years, and John Woodley for 4. And I think, we have to really, truly appreciate not only these three individuals, but the Board of Elections as a whole, given the fact that all of these individuals, the volunteers and the staff, are dedicated to protecting the fundamental rights to voters in Carroll County, and I greatly appreciate all of their hard work. And that's all I have today.
Great. And a couple things just to share first, and then I'll hand it over to Commissioner Guerin, is had a wonderful Memorial Day over at the American Legion 223. The Salute Battery did a great job recognizing those that paid the ultimate sacrifice in wars all the way up until the most current. So that was a good event to attend, and Mayor Link and I were both at that. Last night attended the Board of Education facility brief, and this had to do with the Board of Education's decision-making process on two real actions. One has to do with redistricting and where the SARC, or the Southern Area Redistricting Committee, had made their recommendations, and then also on potential facilities and changes to facilities. The Board of Education decided to not move forward with redistricting at this time and not move forward with potential recommendations, but also in the same breath praised the redistricting committee for all of their hard work, those that were volunteer from the community and also from our government staff. So I appreciate that. They did make recommendations on changing facilities in both Freedom Elementary and Sykesville Middle School to accommodate the community as growth is happening in the southern part of the county. And their timelines, and we're going to have to work through this, but their timelines was basically FY 25 through 29 or 30, but much more to follow on that as things get, cleared up. Tomorrow I apologize. Saturday, I will be attending, I appreciate you mentioned General Burkhead because it reminded me, I will be attending the change of command between Major General Tim Gowan, our Adjutant General, to now Major General Burkhead, and she was selected by Mayor Moore. So I'll be attending that at the 5th Armory in Baltimore. The last thing I want to share, and Chris, do you have that picture? So this is a picture, it's actually a while ago. And I had the opportunity to throw out a ball at Camden Yards. I've done it a couple times, but this time was the initial one. And the focus should be on the young soldier to my right, Lewis, and I'll just leave it as his first name, who is missing an arm and a couple of legs. And what I did was I found Lewis there, and I gave him the baseball, and he threw it out to me, and I threw it to, that's Johnson, to his right. And then we all came back, and I gave Lewis the baseball. And the next year when I was throwing the ball out Camden Yards, they said, okay, what are you going to do next? I'm like, I don't know. Let me figure it out. But this was pretty special to me because I was like, they're not going to say no to me. They're going to let me do what I wanted, and I did this. I had my son Sam with me, and we had a great day. He was on the field, and he got to meet all the players and was in the dugout for a while. We had a great time at the baseball game. And driving home, I asked him, I said, Sam, you did all of these incredible, wonderful things that day, for Memorial Day. What was the best part of Memorial Day? What was the best part of your day? And he said, without hesitation, meeting Lewis. And it had nothing to do with the food, had nothing to do with the game, it had nothing to do with anything. It had to do with a young man who put himself in harm's way and came back, fortunately, resilient enough to do the things he's doing. Not to, lie, I did shed a handful of tears away from Sam so he didn't see, but I'm driving down 95 and I was like, that's what it's all about. Memorial Day, is not about those that survive, but those that do give the ultimate sacrifice. But it was just a great reminder that, brothers and sisters in arms, it's a team effort, soldiers for life. And as I always say, like you say about Carroll County, I always say life is good. And this is just a great reminder of that. So I just wanted to share, kind of like I said, what's on our mind for the morning. With that, let me hand it over to Commissioner Goering and share with us what's on his mind right now. So, Commissioner Goering.
Thank you, Commissioner Rossi, and thanks for allowing me to carve out a little extra time this morning. So, good morning, Carroll County. So, one of the best part of being a commissioner is you get to meet the people, and you get to know them, and you get to know that what work they do. the programs they run, the volunteer groups in the community, the amount of work that really goes on here in Carroll County, it's extraordinary, and that's, for me, that's my favorite part about being a commissioner. And it's also being exposed to the different programs and things like that that are out there to assist with the county. And the 988 helpline, as we're calling it now, is no exception. I was first exposed to it as a member of the opioid senior policy group, but I know it's been around for a while now, but it's really up and running quite nicely, and I wanted to get involved with it. Took some training, what they call people in the community and the county who are assisting with 988, trying to get the word out there about it, are called ambassadors. And we actually have quite a few in Carroll County, and they're very active, so I commend them for that. But I want to take a couple minutes this morning just to talk about 988, and I've got the flyers out here in the front, and we've got a slide deck added. But the bottom line is very simple. I just want people to understand what 988 is, how useful it can be, and the more I get to understand what they're doing and talk to the people that run the regional centers, it is truly impressive. So 988, it's a suicide and crisis lifeline, and to be honest, they're really trying just to get people to understand something very simple, that it's a helpline. It is a helpline. It is a national network of local responders, and 988 is a local responder in Central Maryland. And you can see down there at the bottom what I meant by regional. There's a regional conglomeration. It's Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Carroll County, and Howard, and I have a slide for that as well, so you can go to the next one. Oh, and there it is. What's interesting about 988 is it started out as a national network, but this is truly a regional network, which I think makes it even more effective. The calls I've been on, it is truly a regional effort. There are people from the state, I think there might even be people from the federal level on these calls, but the people that you're talking to when you call 988 are part of what is called the Greater Baltimore Regional Integrated Crisis System. It's called GBRICS for short. And you can see there how it involves Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Howard, and Carroll County. And when you're on the calls talking to the people who are running this program and you're talking to ambassadors, they truly are regional. They are in the communities, they're in the churches, they're going to different events, and they're trying to get the word out on 988. That's their sole goal. That's their goal, is to get people aware of this incredible service that's available to anybody with a phone. All you got to do is hit 988. So you can go to the next slide for me, Chris. So the national network is, again, I mentioned it's local helplines providing free confidential support. It's been around for a while, but as I mentioned, the GBRIC system and the 988 regional support is fairly new, and what they're really accomplishing on a very local level is pretty astounding. It's staffed 24/7 for an immediate response. Callers are routed to their local call center, and the calls are answered typically within 30 seconds. That number is actually lower. The last call I was on, they had gotten those calls down to 9 seconds. So that just shows you how serious they're taking this particular service. They're also in the process, the people that are running this call center regionally, they're now finally getting a lot of data. They're sifting through it. They're going to be making what changes are needed and to the system itself as the data comes in. Maryland has an 85% in-state answer rate, so that accounts for people who maybe call and hang up and things like that. So it is pretty extraordinary service, and again, that's what this talk is about, is to get people to be aware of it. It's 988. Go to the next slide for me. Is that it? I think it was. Okay. Yeah. So again, when you call 988, what you'll immediately get is a prompt to go to, if you're a veteran, you can hit 1. They have a Spanish-speaking number if you're a Spanish speaker. They have instituted a third number for LGBTQ sub-network for people that are calling in crisis or people who are wanting to speak about that issue in their lives. And again, this is truly an amazing service. The people in the Carroll County Health Department have been working on this for quite some time. Again, we have ambassadors out in the community trying to raise awareness to get the 988 number out there. And as usual, as commissioners, we will always do whatever we can to help a good cause. And if this isn't a good cause, I don't know what is. I mean, it is saving lives. They're getting a lot of phone calls. We all know that it's not tough being a young person out there nowadays. It's not tough. It's not easy being a parent either. So that 988 number is available for anybody in crisis, anybody who's dealing with issues of suicide, anybody who needs help. Dial 988. Let your family know about it. Let your kids know about it. Grandkids, relatives. It's an available service, and I think what we're all here to tell you is that it works, and we're taking an active role in it. So, again, Commissioner Rothstein, thanks for the extra time this morning.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it very much.
No, I appreciate it, and now I understand number one, because when I call the VA for appointments, you get the automated call, and it says, if there are thoughts of suicide, please hang up, call 988*1.
Okay.
Now I know, and so every time I call the VA, that's the first thing they say. So,
And what's really interesting, and you see this last, and thanks, Chris, for leaving this up, 988 is part of a community effort to reduce the region's historic reliance on law enforcement and EMS for behavioral health emergencies. I applaud the people who initially set this service up, because that is key. That is key. Number one, you want to get the best help you can. So this number is going to do it for you. But we all know what's also going on with our police departments and fire and EMS. They're always there to assist, but this is the right number to call. Again, I appreciate the time.
absolutely. Thank you. Okay. We have a couple of proclamations I want to share this morning. Let's start with Commissioner Vigliotti. I think you have one on dealing with National Trails Day proclamation. And Jeff, if you want to come up to the table and bring whoever you'd like, feel free. And go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Rothstein. Mr. Dagitz, do you want to introduce everybody before I read the proclamation, or do you want to wait till after the proclamation?
I could do it real quick for
Sure.
you. And we have several people from the Carroll County Equestrian Council who are being very shy and not joining me at the table. Thank you. Next to me is Miss Carolyn Garber. Joe Dragon is behind me, which worries me a little bit. And Darlene Welsh is here. Also, Lisa Carroll is our Bureau Chief of Recreation here this morning, and Jamie Knoll, who is Recreation Coordinator. Jamie is our staff liaison to the Equestrian Council.
Awesome.
So,
Well,
back
good
to
morning
you.
to everybody. I will only read one whereas this morning to put everybody's minds at ease. Proclamation, National Trails Day, June 3rd, 2023. Whereas the American Hiking Society's National Trails Day is June 3rd, 2023, and National Trails Day is dedicated to hometown trails and the people who love them, and each year, the Carroll County Equestrian Council joins other organizations across the nation to recognize American Hiking Society's National Trails Day and to showcase and celebrate Carroll County's beautiful trails. And in 1993, the Carroll County Equestrian Council was one of 10 organizations nationwide and the only equestrian organization recognized with the Trails for Tomorrow Award from the American Hiking Society. And Carroll County appreciates the importance of recreation and active living by providing places for people to spend time together in the great outdoors. Carroll County's multi-use public trails are available in every corner of the county, making trails part of our daily lives. Our beautiful trails and parks attract visitors and tourists, create healthy opportunities for exercise and travel, as well as to stimulate economic development, and the Board of Carroll County Commissioners recognizes the Carroll County Equestrian Council for 30 years of participation in National Trails Day, and thanks them for partnering with Carroll County Recreation and Parks to promote and care for multi-use trails in Carroll County. Now, therefore, we, the Board of Carroll County Commissioners, do hereby proclaim June 3rd, 2023 as National Trails Day in Carroll County, Maryland, and invite all citizens to observe this occurrence. Adopted this first day of June 2023, signed to the entire Board of Carroll County Commissioners.
Okay. Jeff, what's on your mind with all that said?
Well, I'll be very brief, and then I'll let Carolyn talk about this a little bit. We were both involved in 1993 with this, with the first submission and the first national contest for that. And I had the opportunity and the privilege to go out to Reno, Nevada to accept the award on behalf of the Equestrian Council. And first of all, for a county this size and an organization this size to be considered and to compete and then ultimately to win that award was a pretty special thing. And being the only equestrian group there, I had to learn a lot about equestrian-related issues, so I didn't sound like an idiot when I went out there. And just the importance of promoting trails and all the good things that come from trails really was a special experience. It was great recognition for the Equestrian Council. We were extremely proud of them then. We remain proud of them now. And with that, I'll turn it over to Carolyn.
And you don't sound like an idiot, so keep going. Okay, just saying.
1993, maybe.
Carolyn, please.
Thank you for this recognition. The Equestrian Council has been active with Rec and Parks for quite some long time. It's hard to believe we've been doing trail work for 30 years. But if we as volunteers didn't continue to provide that volunteer effort, the trails would not be accessible in some areas. The trails that we maintain are the ones that are not the paved walking trails that are in the sports fields, parks, I would say. They're the more natural areas. So thank you for the recognition. We appreciate it, and we appreciate the support of all of the volunteer recreation councils.
And you started when you were, what, 6, 7? Okay, just,
Thank you.
Just, okay.
Kenny knows.
Yes.
Now, I appreciate, all the things you do. So thank you. Any thoughts, comments? No? Okay. Any of the backbenchers want to say anything, or just they're looking strong? Oh,
I'm just
okay.
the worker bee for these girls. They're the ones that started it. They're the ones that are the brains behind the organization, and without them, it wouldn't be here. So
You're not calling Jeff a girl.
we call them Jeff.
You're not calling Jeff a girl. No. Okay. Okay, why don't we come down, get a proclamation, get a picture. Matt will come out from the magic door.
Awesome last name.
Carolyn? I want a hug. Kenny loves that. Did you get this? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I ain't hugging you. Don't worry about it. The birdie.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Doing, Joe? I miss you.
I'll tell you what. I do miss the people for the job.
Okay, the next proclamation is regarding the 79th anniversary of the D-Day landing by the 29th Infantry Division. So whoever wants to come on up, please come on up, have a seat. And just let you know, I am wearing the blue and gray, so you should be seeing that at least. Now, I know you're all ain't just humble gentlemen, so you want to keep coming, you can take one of our seats if you want.
Sit down.
I thought you wanted me up there.
Eventually.
So who outranks who right now?
Doesn't matter. You're not in uniform.
That was actually a good answer from Top. So he outranks and just tells them all where to go and how to do it. So, but this is a proclamation for the 79th anniversary of the D-Day landing by the 29th Infantry Division. Whereas the 29th Infantry Division was founded in 1917 with regiments from Maryland, Virginia, for services in World War I, and fought bravely in Alsace and Meuse-Argonne campaigns in France. And 29th Infantry Division was again called into federal service on February 3rd, 1941 for World War II. And in World War II, the 29th Infantry Division played a decisive role when it became part of the first and second wave of the U.S. assault forces on Omaha Beach, Normandy, France, on June 6, 1944, known as D-Day. The D-Day landings turned the tide of World War II and marked the beginning of the end of Nazi Germany. And the 29th Infantry Division fought in campaigns through northern France, Rhineland, and Central Europe until final victory on May 11, 1945. And as America marks the 79th anniversary of the D-Day landing in World War II, many of the veterans and their families will visit Normandy American Cemetery, the final resting place for over 9,300 United States service members for commemorative services. And hundreds of veterans of the 29th Infantry Division reside in Carroll County, as well as many more who form the present-day 29th Infantry Division Association, who've served in the global war on terrorism. We honor those who've served and those who are still serving communities in Carroll County, Maryland, and their nation at home and overseas. Now, therefore, we, the Board of Carroll County Commissioners, do hereby proclaim June 1st, 2023, to be 29th Infantry Division Day in recognition of the 79th anniversary of the 29th Infantry D-Day landing in Carroll County, and urge all citizens to honor the services and sacrifice of these veterans. Adopted this first day of June 2023, signed by all commissioners. And just share with you my personal, I guess, and professional experiences being side by side with brothers and sisters in arms in both Iraq and Afghanistan, wearing the 29th Infantry Division patch. You know, it's one of those things. It doesn't matter if you're active duty or if you're guard or if you're whatever. If you're there carrying a weapon and putting yourself in harm's way, you just want to have confidence in left and right of those that you serve with. You didn't care if it was a D or an R or an I or anything else. You cared that they were well-trained and well-positioned, and I never had anything but the utmost respect and confidence that they were at all times, and especially with some of the very difficult roles that you collectively were given in both Iraq and Afghanistan while I was there. So I remember it very distinctly. So thank you. And again, I'm wearing the blue and gray as I'm supposed to. So, but any thoughts, comments before I hand it off?
I'd like to say something quickly. Great seeing so many familiar faces, and Donald Graff and Junior Fisher and I actually served together, and I know Donald, they're not going to believe this because Junior's so much younger than we are, but he was there with us. Right, Junior?
So, anything else? Gentlemen, what's on your mind?
Oh, first off, Commissioner, I can't believe you own up to knowing Junior Fisher. That comes as a shock. I just want to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you. As the Commissioner said, Tuesday will actually, June 6th will mark the 79th anniversary, but it started long before that. You know, many of these youngsters, and that's what they were, left home 2 years before that and trained in Europe. You know, they left the farms and the factories, you know, their neighborhoods and their families, and many of them never made it home. As the current commander of Post 48 here in Carroll County, which I got by default, we're just as you can see, we're just a bunch of old veterans. There's not a whole lot that we're going to do to change anything politically or in the nation, but all we're trying to do is just keep the spirit of the 29th Infantry Division alive. And I think most of you, as you know, we just dedicated a bridge on Route 32 down in between Sykesville and Gamber to Joe Fahrenholt, who was a 4-time Silver Star winner who was a longtime resident of Carroll County and was actually the original founder of Post 48 here in Carroll County. So we're just trying to keep as we in society today, as we seem to want to erase history, we're trying to keep it alive. So again, thank you very much.
No, I appreciate it.
I'd like to thank the commissioners also for this proclamation. It's very appropriate not only to the D-Day invasion, but Memorial Day. And I speak from personal experience. My mother came from a family of 13 out of Hampstead, Maryland, and her brother, who probably could have gotten a waiver to get out of the military because he was a farmer along with my grandfather, and they were raising food and milk, and joined the unit here in Carroll County, and they went away to training in 1940. And then were getting out. They were actually only in for a year and getting out when Pearl Harbor hit. And of course, we were taken back in. He was went over for training in England. While he was in England, he got a promotion, and I guess you would say luck of the draw, he ended up out of the unit locally and ended up in the 116th, which was the first unit to hit the beach. He survived the beach, but later on in June, he was a machine gunner, and he was killed in France, serving in the 29th. He was temporarily interned in France, but after the war, they gave the families opportunities to bring back. So Charles Wesley Singer, PFC, Private First Class Charles Wesley Singer, is now interned or buried in at Wesley Church, which is the family plot. And I just want to say that we appreciate the commissioners honoring the many from Carroll County who not only served but gave their lives in the service to their country. Thank you, gentlemen.
No, I appreciate it. Just a couple quick things just to follow up. I mean, it's a true testament to citizen soldiers, you know. There's lots of books, and, you know, you get the opportunity to read about citizen soldiers that have to put down the work they're doing and do it selflessly at all different ages. You know, we hear a lot about the young kids that enter and lie about their age to get in. It also went the other way. You know, there was, you know, the elders that went in and committed themselves as citizen soldiers. 4 silver stars. People, you know, it rattles off the tongue, but don't recognize and understand a silver star is given for heroism and only given in conflict. And to receive 4 of them is remarkable. And it's maybe third highest award given for heroism. It is not just a service award, and to receive 4 of them is just a remarkable feat, to say the least. And lastly, again, just as Commissioner Kyler highlights Carroll County often about being proud of being Carroll County, and as we all are, I often like to highlight veterans and veteran services. And when you talked about being temporarily interred and then moved, most recently, a lot of folks know my dad passed this past July 4th, and I went through Veteran Affairs and ordered a marker, a gravestone, and you're allowed and you're authorized. Again, it is another opportunity for our veterans that are out there, because it's not all about you, it's about the family, to get your VA card and your benefits that you deserve and your family deserve. I got a call yesterday from the VA, and they said it should be there within 6 weeks. So it's not like it's years and years in its making. We've come a long way with the Veteran Affairs. We've come a long way with our community veterans programs. So I will always continue to highlight, take opportunities that are deserving for you and your families as our veterans. So.
And Commissioner, if I could just add
Please.
one other thing. So both of my grandfathers are World War II veterans, Thomas Joseph Spindler and Anthony Vigliotti. And growing up with them and growing up where I did and knowing this Board of Commissioners and all of the people in this room, when veterans speak, and I really do mean this, when veterans speak, it's like thunder. And it reverberates because it's a kind of living history in a way, and you remind us of what we have. And I really cannot thank you enough for what you did for us and for continuing to speak out about things that matter. And really thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here today and for doing this.
And you are
God bless you guys.
you are including Mr. Shoemaker as well, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
No, definitely.
Just want to make sure the state's attorney is, in that mix. So.
If I can say one thing, when I came back, I was enlisted on active duty, and I came back and joined the 29th. And I can tell you that when Lieutenant Kyler left the 29th Division, it was the 29th Division's loss. He was a.
Oh, come on now.
He was.
Come on.
He was.
They ran him out.
I was behind him when I became a commissioned officer. I was behind him going out to Fort Sill, and they were still talking about his exploits at Fort Sill when he went through officer basic for field artillery.
And he can't hear a damn thing now. So
I was going to say, as Commissioner Rothstein was saying.
And is it true they tried to keep you out there as an instructor?
Yeah, what I would like you guys to do, and I know you feel like you're here representing so many others, and we've been talking very familiar with you because we know you guys. I think each of you ought to introduce yourself, say a couple words about yourself for the public watching this, please.
Junior?
Oh, my Lord, you don't want me.
you gotta get by a mic though. Even though people,
Mike, I don't need a mic.
even though people can hear you, go ahead.
When I joined, I was in July 17th, 1944. 2 hitches in the Navy. Then from the Navy, 1949, come back. They needed the National Guard reorganized when Company H came back. So I helped with the 28th H to get back organized in the National Guard. They didn't call it National Guard then, they called it the Minuteman back in 49. So I stayed a Minuteman for a couple of years. Then they transferred to 28th Division in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
Then they must stay about 3 years, and they brought us back to Westminster. And they went under the 29th Division. And that was Pikesville. Then from Pikesville, they had B Battery here in Westminster and A Battery in Pikesville. So then they ended up converting A Battery to Westminster and took B Battery down to Pikesville.
Mm-hmm.
Then they changed everything all around again. So actually, I stayed. Well, when he come in there, I tried to teach him everything, but he wouldn't listen half the time. He wouldn't want once in a while. You done a good job to me.
Fantastic.
So he didn't disappear. He got out. So I stayed in. I said, well, hell, I got 15 years and I might as well stay on in. So after 15 years, I said, hell, it's getting easier. So then I stayed to 86. So then, from 1944 to 86, I took
Wow.
off. I said, then they put me out 60 years old. When I'm 68, 60 years old, you got to go. But they sent me to Germany for 2 weeks. Come back, you got to go. I said, good. 60 years, I was ready to go back. In 60 years.
Wow.
I said, okay. I left in 60, when I was age 60. But I spent 40 years. But ain't very much money, though. It is poor.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate you going from the bloody bucket to blue and gray, so.
Right now, I'm 97 years old.
God bless you.
I'm still kicking.
You don't look a day over 96.
Good morning, I'm Bill Nash. My memory's not as good as Junior's. So
Why don't you come up to the mic, it'll be easier.
we won't go back for any history, but I am currently chairman of the Veterans Council for Carroll County Advisory Council, and that is an honor and a privilege, and hopefully that I can continue to do that for some additional time. But thank you very much for the proclamation, and thanks to all the veterans.
Well, thank you. Mr. Shoemaker?
10-minute break.
Yeah, no kidding.
Very briefly. So, I served in an infantry unit with the Maryland Army National Guard in Catonsville, which was right next to UMBC, where I went to school. I shipped out for basic to Fort Benning 4 days after graduation. I never had to get activated or deployed. We were on alert a couple of times because stuff was going on with Libya and Iran. But we were told to stand down, and I was kind of happy about that, to be perfectly frank. So, by and large, though, I think I never had to deploy because Reagan was president in those days, and not many people messed with us. So, I did my hitch and got out. That's what I did. I didn't stay in 40 years like Junior, but he's my hero.
No, I appreciate it, and I'll tell you, whether it's a day.
Go ahead, sir.
Who's next?
I'll be brief. I started out as an enlisted man and then figured I came off of active duty. I did a enlisted hitch in Germany and then came off active duty and joined the Maryland Guard. I was in the 175th Infantry out of the 5th Regiment Armory, and we were training one day, and these guys came riding by with these big mortars hanging on the back of their trucks, and all of them hollering out the back, "You suckers, walk, you suckers." I asked my first sergeant, I said, "Who are those guys?" And they say, "Oh, that's the artillery. They're out of Westminster." I said, "Wait a minute, I live in Westminster, and I love to ride." So I ended up in A Battery, went to OCS, got commissioned because I figured if I was going to make it a career, I might as well be all I can be. And that's where I met Kenny and Commissioner Kyler. And I'm serious about that. Commissioner Kyler was one of the, from what I understand or what I can remember, was one of the few people that maxed gunnery at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. A very smart gentleman, and a loss when he got out of the National Guard.
You're going to ruin my reputation.
No kidding.
Catch him every now and then to do it.
Okay.
So that's it. I did a hitch in the artillery. I also did, I was commander of a separate infantry brigade. I was commander of the company, 255 men and women, and that was an experience. And then I ended up as the IG for the state of Maryland, Inspector General's office.
Cool. Okay, top.
Thank you. First Sergeant William Rozier, I did, I'll make this brief. I was actually when I went to high school, I was the smartest person there. I was smarter than my teachers, smarter than the rest of the students, so I decided not to stay in school. I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. When I went off I enlisted in the Navy. When I went off to basic training, when I quit school, I thought the top of my mother's head was going to come off, and my father, who was a World War II veteran, just told my mother, said, just sign the papers, because he's not getting an education now, but I can promise he's about to get one. And he was so right. So I wound up doing 3 years in the United States Navy, had a 5-year break in service. Ran into Frank Rauschenberg, who was at the time, he was a fire investigator for the state of Maryland. And he was actually pretty slick, knew he was going to see a bunch of young volunteer firemen around the county. Kept a uniform hanging in the back of his vehicle and knew it would strike up a conversation. And it actually struck up a conversation with me. I wound up joining Alpha Battery in 1977 and stayed until 2010 when we folded our guidons. I served in different capacities in the battery, deployed numerous times, met a lot of good friends, a lot of good soldiers, some good and some bad, had some good times, bad times, but I would be remiss if it's not all about the veterans either. If it wasn't for my lovely bride, none of this would be possible. And I think any soldier that have ever put on a uniform, if it wasn't for their bride, who had to become mother and father, housekeeper, cook, lawn maintenance, we couldn't do what we do. So, big shout out to the wives. So again, thank you very much.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right?
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. And just, we can go on for a long time about this. But there's a couple things that are really important, and not to be so profound about it, but whether you serve a day or 30 plus years, whatever it is, you raise your right hand and you willfully give up certain inalienable rights by doing that, by serving selflessly, to allow all of us to have those inalienable rights. So when somebody thanks us for our service, I turn around and thank them for giving me the reason to serve. People don't recognize that we do that. So if you deployed or not deployed or regardless, you give up those inalienable rights every time when you raise that right hand, and you do it willfully. That should never get lost on what we do. I appreciate talking about the families, without a doubt. We did marry very far up, and the joke in the house was, I don't remember that. Well, you were deployed. You miss a lot. And with my kids, mental health, as Commissioner Garing, spoke about, is so important. Let's crush the stigma that exists with our veterans and with our community, that it's okay to seek help and get it before things go awry. So it all kind of ties right back together. So I really appreciate this opportunity. I didn't want to go as long, but I think, again, we can talk about this for a long, long time. We do it well in Carroll County with our Veterans Council. Mr. Nash, you are doing just a great job. Our Citizen Services does a great job. All of the community, the legions, and all those that are supporting our veterans, just phenomenal. But today is about you collectively in recognizing the 29th Infantry Division. So with that, why don't we get ourselves a photo and go from there.
Let me say a little more than that here.
Be quick, Judy.
My Navy career was, when I went in 1944, I was assigned to amphibious force. I made landings. 49. I forgot that in my minutes. I was an amphibious man. I was a boatswain mate. I drove in LCPs and all.
Junior, I'm surprised you remember your name, so I thought.
You can just call me any name you want.
Thank you.
Yeah, no shit. What's up with that? I did not comment on it.
You commented when I wore one. I won't repeat what you said.
I was so close,
I won't repeat what you said to me when I wore one.
but I couldn't.
I'll just say that when I finish sarcasm.
Now, you realize that, Mr. Shoemaker. I made no comments about that suit. Just want to let you know. I made no comment. It is not summertime.
It's after Memorial Day.
Just, I did.
Better that way than it does any other way.
I didn't hear the word sear. All I heard was summer.
You gotta show 'em.
I won't repeat what Commissioner Rothstein said to me when I showed up
you
in one
will
of those suits. Better for everybody.
It's a southern thing.
Okay. Mr. Daggett, why don't you come on up here and talk about FY 2024 program open space allocation?
So back to work, huh?
Back to work. And who are you bringing up with you?
With me this morning, I have Miss Lisa Carroll. Lisa is the Bureau Chief of Recreation. She oversees the programming side of our department. And even though we're going to be talking about town POS projects, a lot of these facilities are used by our rec councils and our programs. So there's a very definite connection to Lisa. Just quickly to review for you and for the people at home, every year we take 25% of the program open space funds that are allocated to Carroll County, and we designate those for municipal projects. 50% of the amount goes to land acquisition. 25% goes to land acquisition. The remaining 50% can be used as we see fit, acquisition or development. So this morning we're talking about the FY 2024 municipal projects. Of the 8 municipalities, we actually have a rotating basis where 4 will get the funding one year, the other 4 would get the funding the following year. The allocation for FY '24, the total amount is $2,414,703. So with 25% going to the towns, that's a total of $603,675. We then divide that equally among the 4 towns, as was the recommendation from the local chapter of Maryland Municipal League. It results in $150,918 for each of the 4 towns to receive the money this year. Just to run through the projects very quickly so you know where that money is being spent and for what. The town of New Windsor, Atlee Ridge walking path, they will be adding a half-court basketball court there to address some requests from the community. They will also be using money to add lighting to their skate park, and then doing some improvements to the Sulphur Springs Spring House. That's a historic structure, and they've had some drainage issues there that they'll be looking to improve. For the city of Tawnytown High School Park, they will be adding athletic field lighting to 2 out of the 3 fields there. Those fields are used by youth girls softball. Baseball in the community has had lights for years up at Tawnytown Memorial Park. So this equals the playing field, literally. Tawnytown Memorial Park also will be replacing a tot lot there, so they'll use some of the money towards that as well. Union Bridge Community Center will be making some much-needed improvements to the community center itself. This includes flooring, HVAC, lighting, etc. And then last but not least, City of Westminster will be making some improvements to Westminster City Park. They have 2 tennis courts there now. They're going to convert one of them into exclusive pickleball courts. The other one, they're going to resurface, and it'll be used for both pickleball and tennis. So that's the extent of the projects. We would be including these projects along with the county projects using program open space funding in our annual program, which will be submitted to the state prior to July 1. Happy to answer any questions about any of the projects that you may have.
Not just to say very quick, I mean, coming from a municipal background myself, I mean, it's this partnership with the county and open space funding is really critical for small towns because they just simply do not have the funding to be able to contend with certain projects or to do certain things, and these end up benefiting thousands of our residents.
So,
Yeah,
no,
please.
go ahead. No, please. Go.
I was just going to say, it's broken up evenly, not equitably, evenly across the municipalities.
Yes.
Should it be?
That's a decision or recommendation that we have left to the local chapter of MML, Maryland Municipal League. More often than not, that is how they choose to proceed. In some cases, this dollar amount may be all of the funding that's going towards those projects. In other cases, it contributes to it. We recognize that not all of the towns are the same.
Right.
Not all of their resources are the same. Some of the larger towns may have larger projects.
Right.
So they're kicking in additional funds themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the last time it was discussed, you know, as far as how it is divided up. You know, it makes it easy to look at it this way when it's all the same numbers 4 times, but should it be? Where, you know, like Commissioner Vigliotti said, I mean, this is crucial to Tawny Town's, you know, opportunities, growth opportunities. Without it, it would be in a really difficult time, whereas in Westminster, it may not be as crucial with this dollar amount or other locations. But, you know,
And with
that's just-
requesting the input from MML each year, they have the opportunity to make a recommendation different than dividing it equally,
Yeah.
or even to go outside of the rotation with the 4 one year and a 4 another year.
So it's
Yeah.
addressed every year, basically.
Yes, that opportunity and that discussion is there every year. And I can't recall a year when they've come back with something where we didn't agree with the projects or didn't feel that there were necessary projects in there.
Right. Okay. I apologize, Commissioner Karen.
That's okay. Just a few questions, just trying to understand the process. So, the Maryland Municipal League, obviously, they're working with the municipalities to come up with this list. And once we approve it, if we approve it, there's no state involvement at this point. These funds are then thus approved and just dispersed out to the municipalities in this amount.
Well, it's actually a reimbursable grant. So what we need to do each year for all of our program open space projects is to complete what's called an annual program. That annual program will include the municipal projects. It will also include the county projects. Once we submit the annual program, then there's additional paperwork. There's an application for each individual project. Once that is approved, we're able to move forward with the projects. And then basically, we do the expenditures, we pay for the projects, and then get reimbursed for them.
Okay.
And program open space, for the most part, pays for 90% of the projects. Then there's a 10% match. For the county projects, we pay the full 10%. For the municipal projects, we split that 10%. The town pays 5%, we pay 5%. That's per a town-county agreement.
And the total amount available, how widely does it vary from year to year? Is it typically the same amount of money that's allocated for the next
It's never
4?
been the same amount 2 years in a row.
Okay.
We had a 10-year period where the high was 3.6 million, and the low was 166,000.
Okay.
That's where Ted and his staff earn their money trying to budget on what you think the state is going to give you.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Motion to approve the recommendation of the local chapter of the Maryland Municipal League for FY 2024 Municipal Program Open Space Projects.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Any discussion? Seeing here none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, let's talk about Critical Farms Program application to Levi Fisher, Matty Fisher, and Jacob Fisher. We got the entire team. Okay.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Why do I do this every time?
Far left. far left. Yeah, you go.
As I'm always looking at the line above. Good morning, Commissioners. How's everyone this morning?
Morning, how are you?
Thank you.
We're doing well. Glad to be here in front of you today. Today, we're requesting final approval for a Critical Farms program for Levi Fisher, Maddie Fisher, and Jacob Fisher. The Critical Farms program is a program we have that helps people purchase farms. We help with 52.5% of the purchase price or the appraised value, whichever is lower. And this is a very popular program. It is we're most proud of this program in the county. Levi, Maddie, and Jacob Fisher are purchasers of 4030 Francis Scott Key Highway in Tawnytown. It's a 150-acre farm. We will be retiring 17 lot rights. This is a picture of the farm right off of Route 194. This is in District 1. The appraised value was $1,730,400, and the purchase price is $2,500,000. The cost is $908,400, which is 52.5% of the appraised value because that is lower than the purchase price. Here's how the farm fits in other preserved properties in the Tawnytown area. So a picture of the farm off of 194. Again, we're here for Levi Fisher, Maddie Fisher, and Jacob Fisher, contract purchasers of 4030 Francis Scott Key Highway in Tawnytown, 150 acres, 17 lot rights in District 1. At a cost of $908,400. Any questions about the property or anything?
Are you seeing appraised values pretty much less than what the purchase prices are right now in Carroll County, or back and forth?
As far as the purchase price for this farm, which was at $16,600, the appraised value was much lower. I think a lot of the properties that have been sold seem to be higher and should have a higher appraised value, but they're giving a lot of value to the improvements on the farm, and once you take that out, then the value of the land is a little bit lower, and we only pay based on the appraisal of the land only. But the appraisals are lagging a little bit, but it's not keeping the demand for the land down.
With the generational shift economically, are we seeing more estate-related farms coming into the programs?
There seem to be a lot of estate settlements.
Okay.
Motion to exercise the option to purchase for Levi Fisher, Maddie Fisher, and Jacob Fisher through the Critical Farms program in the amount of $908,460.
Second.
Okay, got a motion second. Any more discussion or questions on this one? Seeing here none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's talk about purchasing some Freightliner trucks.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning. All right. Good morning. The Office of Procurement, in cooperation with the Bureau of Fleet Management and the Maintenance Center, requests your approval to purchase the vehicles listed below from National Auto Fleet Group in the total amount of $1,188,156. This purchase is being made through a Sourcewell contract number 060920-NAF that was competitively bid. The amount is within the adopted FY23 budget, and no additional funds should be necessary. It's going to be two 2024 Freightliner 108 SD model 108-14-32 for a total of $669,210. One 2024 114 SD model 174-20-40 for $279,246, and one 2024 108 SD dump body with a hoist for $239,700.
Commissioners, I'd like to run through some slides to help break the request down. First, we have a single axle dump truck. The new unit will be identical to what you're looking at here, and it will replace an existing unit in the fleet. Next, we have the request of 2 single-axle hook lift trucks. These will also replace 2 dump trucks in the fleet. And the reason for that request is the hook lift trucks will allow the Bureau of Roads to expand their road brine operations. Currently, there are only 2 hook lift trucks in the fleet, so having 4 total will allow 1 for each quadrant of the county to better prepare the roads for inclement weather during the winter months. In addition to the vehicles, the salt brine tank and spray system, as you see pictured, is included, as well as a V-hopper body for spreading salt, a flatbed platform, and a dumpster body for transporting various materials. And then lastly, we have the tandem axle hook lift truck. The new unit will look identical to what we were looking at here. It will replace one of those 2 current hook lift trucks that we have in the fleet. We are not requesting the purchase of any body platforms for this truck, and the reason is the current body platforms are in sufficient condition, and we will reuse them to help keep costs down. On the left is a picture of the V-hopper for spreading salt, and on the right is the brine tank for spraying road brine. And the last slide is just some pictures of the current units in the fleet to show the condition of them. I'll point out the bottom right picture is an engine replacement that we had to perform in a dump truck back in November, and those frequent and costly repairs are why we're looking for the board's approval to replace them. The new units, sadly, I do not expect them to arrive for about 1.5 years. And other than that, if the board has any questions, myself and Mr. Cook are here to answer them.
The the additional vehicles, the 2 additional, I mean, not replacements, but additional.
They are replacements.
Everything here is a replacement?
Correct. So purchasing 4, replacing 4.
Oh. Okay.
The 2 single axle hook lift trucks will be replacing dump trucks though, so there's
Yeah.
a transition from the dump to the hook lift truck.
Are the vehicles that are being replaced going to last 1.5 years?
Good questions.
If one of the trucks needs an engine replacement in the near future, we'll have to go ahead and commit to that repair to get us through until the new trucks come. If it's something that happens maybe a few months prior to the new trucks coming in, if we have the ability to, we'll hold off on those costly repairs.
Did we wait too long before executing this and ordering?
So for FY23, I know we're coming down to the wire. We were finally able to secure those 4 order slots.
Okay.
There's also a lot of limitations. I don't believe we would be able to order any more if we wanted to. And the trucks of this caliber that were ordered in 2021, we have 2 of them that are just about finished being built, and 1 that is going to take a couple more months. So we still have trucks coming in from all the way back then, but we're doing what we can with the situation.
Wow. Okay.
Could you, and you've probably done this before, so I apologize. So how will you dispose of the vehicles being replaced, and is that market going up, down, or about the same?
So in general, we're seeing about a 35% resale value increase in vehicles across the board. The dump trucks, they are tricky. It's a very specific market. But each vehicle will be auctioned through public surplus, and anyone has the ability to bid on those vehicles.
Motion to award the purchase of the above vehicles to National Auto Fleet Group in the amount of $1,188,156.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion, I have a second. Any further discussion on this? Seeing here none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
let's talk about new guardrail installation.
The Office of Procurement, in cooperation with the Department of Public Works Bureau of Roads Operations, requests that your approval to have Long Fence Company Incorporated install new guardrail in the amount of $54,352.50. This work per the Maryland State Highway Administration contract number 477D71424, which was competitively bid. This amount is within the fiscal year 23 budget, and no additional funds should be necessary.
Any questions?
How many How many different guardrail contractors do you guys tend to use?
Right now, it's just this current
I
one.
was going to say, it can't
Just
be
long
many.
fence?
And you've had no problems with them?
Not yet, not at this time. Yeah. So
You
far,
say-
so
you didn't say
good.
not yet.
So far, so good. Yeah.
Okay,
You guys want to make the motion? It's in, I think, both of your districts.
doesn't matter. I'll move the Board of Commissioners approve the installation of new guardrails, Long Fence Company, in the amount of $54,352.50.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion in a couple seconds. Albeit delayed seconds. Any discussion? Seeing here none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you,
you,
Commissioners.
gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go into a recess in a second, but does anybody have anything for open admin at this time?
Might I make a suggestion that we do the agenda review and all of that now? Oh, okay.
I will, but
Okay.
does anybody have anything for open admin?
Oh, no.
Just the minutes from, we had a closed.
Yeah, so what I'd like you to do is take a look at the closed minutes from May 25th regarding land acquisition. And if we can reach out to Wanda for agenda.
She might be listening.
Um, Okay.
Motion to approve closed minutes from May 25th, 2023, land acquisition.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion, I have a second. Any discussion on that? Seeing here none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We will be going into closed after we go into the next topic regarding ag zoning, but what we can do now is we can go through agendas. And Ms. Wanda had her fast shoes on and she was able to get here. I appreciate that flexibility. Monday, June 5th. It is high school graduation week.
Yes.
Westminster High School graduation at 9 a.m. and then South Carroll graduation at 3 p.m. Commissioner Gordon will be attending the first and Commissioner Guerin will be attending the second. Both and all high school graduations will be at McDaniel College. On Tuesday, there's Liberty High School graduation at 9 a.m. and Winners Mill at 3 p.m. I'll be attending the morning, and Commissioner Gordon and Kyler will be attending at 3 p.m. On Wednesday, June 7th, Commissioner Kyler will be attending the Manchester Valley High School graduation at 9 a.m. And Commissioner Vigliotti will be attending the Francis Scott Key graduation at 3 p.m. There is a Hoff Barn celebration at the Carroll County Farm Museum that is scheduled at 3 p.m. and Commissioner Kyler will be attending. I will be participating in the Governor's Workforce Development Board over at the Community College in Baltimore County at 3:30 p.m. And Commissioner Gordon will be participating in a virtual Planning and Zoning Commission meeting at 6 p.m. On Thursday, June 8th, we have both Mr. Sanderson and County Executive from Howard County, Calvin Ball, will be attending at 9:15 in the morning to talk through MACO and hear from us on our MACO or our priorities, but also have a healthy discussion on what the MACO priorities are for the upcoming legislative season and in preparation for the summer conference, which will be happening in August. We'll have a second public hearing regarding the Community Development Block Grant feasibility study for the Carroll County Youth Services Bureau. Ms. Steckel from Citizen Services. And then she will still be with us to talking about submitting housing and urban development youth homeless demonstration project application. Then DPW will be talking to us about a 2023 hot mix asphalt paving project. And then Office of Rec and Parks will be talking about the Westminster Veterans Memorial Sidewalk. I will be attending the Century High School graduation at 1 p.m. that afternoon. And then that later afternoon, there's a BWI partnership annual meeting and award ceremony I'll be attending over at Linthicum Heights at BWI Airport. Friday, June 9th, Commissioner Kyler will be attending the Racial Justice Conference over at the Carroll Community College. And then at 4:30 p.m., there's a municipal pool ribbon cutting where Commissioner Gordon and Kyler will be wearing bathing suits and jumping in a pool in Westminster. On June 11th, Commissioner Kyler has the podcast. Tuesday, June 13th, Therapeutic Recreation Day. Commissioner Kyler is scheduled to attend over at the Farm Museum. And then there's the Special Olympics Torch Run, where Commissioner Gordon, Kyler, Vigliotti, and myself will be participating in. There's a joint board and ESAC meeting at 2 p.m. on Tuesday, June 13th, where all 5 of us will be attending. And then 7 p.m., the Ag Board meeting will occur, and I'll be attending that at the Ag Center. On Wednesday, June 14th, Farm Museum Board meeting, Commissioner Vigliotti will be participating in the morning. And then there's a Board of Education board meeting at 5 p.m. So if there's any takers at this time, let us know. If not, please consider it, and then we'll go from there. At 6 p.m. that evening, there's a Flag Day ceremony over at the Farm Museum. I believe it's also a time where we have the opportunity to properly dispose of flags. It's a ceremony as well. So if anybody has flags to be disposed of appropriately, you can bring them there, out to the community, you can bring them there, but also understand that I know in American Legions across the county, there are disposal areas. And you can just walk into the American Legion and bring the colors, put them in the box, and they will appropriately dispose of them. They are not to be thrown in the garbage.
No.
On Thursday, June 15th, we have open session, and our planning department will have the public hearing regarding the water and sewer triennial update. And then later that evening, there is a MML event, which is a combined event between Carroll County and Frederick County, to be held in Links of Shalidon, Mount Airy, and right now we have Commissioner Guerin and Kyler attending that. Friday, Saturday, nothing scheduled, and Commissioner Gordon has, the podcast for Sunday, the 18th. Yes.
Just a word on the MML. I don't know if others have time to attend it. It should be interesting because of all the elections. It's going to be some new faces at this one.
Right. I'm going to check to see if I can make that.
Wanda, if you could you put me down for the MML event on the 15th, and then also the Flag Day ceremony on the 14th, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
And then, Joe, don't we have something during Flag Day? I thought there was there's something in Tawnytown that I'm participating in.
Something, was it at the
At the Memorial Park. You and I I thought it was then.
I will double check that.
Yeah.
Is it with the, is the Legion maybe that's doing it?
No, I think it's at the Memorial Park. We'll check.
Yeah, I'll double check.
Okay. And that's off of my memory, which is not, always as clear as it should be. What I need now, well, first off, Wanda, did I do okay for you?
Yes.
Okay. What I need now is a motion to recess for about 10 minutes. We can reconvene at 10:45. They're going to reconfigure the room, allow us to go into a work session. So a motion to recess till 10:45.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, appreciate the delay of a couple minutes, but let's get started. On the agenda is a work session regarding a discussion and potential decisions regarding zoning on our agricultural properties across Carroll County. We have Ms. Eisenberg and Mr. Hine, Land Resource Management and Planning, to facilitate and lead us through the discussion. Also, in addition to this, we have Ms. Matthias and
Voight.
Mr. Boyd, Jay, and Pierce, and
Price.
Price.
why am I saying Pierce all the time?
He looks like a Pierce. We're gonna start calling him Pierce.
And Price.
His real name's Walter. Heck, and-
Rusty, would you like him to just change his name? to
He
make life
should.
easy
It
for
would.
him?
It's the third time I called him Pierce. Anyway, Price. To get us through the conversation, I apologize if you can't take yourself so seriously. So, with that said, Linda or Chris, why don't you walk us through kind of where we've been, what got us here today, and some suggestions in moving forward.
Sure. So I'll go ahead and start with that. So I'm recycling a presentation we gave to the commissioners about a year ago with the briefing of the ag conservation districts. So starting with the adoption of the 2014 Carroll County Master Plan and subsequently the Freedom Master Plan, under the direction of the Board of County Commissioners at that time, planning was tasked with not only recodifying the zoning code itself, but also looking at properties for rezoning to be in conformance with the master plan. So typically you have the general planning process that lays out the land use types for the entire county that we have land use authority over, and then lays out recommendations that would be under the different goals and objectives for implementation for this. In this case, we did recodification of the entire zoning code. And what I mean by that is we looked at each and every district in the county under county purview. We went through the definitions of what all the different things that are defined in the zoning code is, from uses to intent to everything. Then we looked at for commercial, industrial, and employment campus, creating what the intensities would be of each. We looked at densities of the residential districts. And then finally, we wrapped it up with the agricultural and conservation zoning districts, which was completed in December of 2022. Part of this effort was we mailed 60,000 households in Carroll County, letting them know that we were undertaking this effort as part of the implementation process from the plan. So you lay out your plan, what the policies are, and you implement it through the regulation. So this is implementing the plan, which follows after the adoption, typically. So with that, I'm not going to go over the other districts, but ag conservation, one of the things that we did was we convened a work group. Mr. Wagner's here today because he was the lead planner who helped create the work group and followed the work group's work program and the recommendations that eventually came to the Board of County Commissioners. So the process for, as you know, for changing zoning text is we come to you, the Board of County Commissioners, for direction on if you would like to have text reviewed. And if so, then you need to forward it per our code to the Planning and Zoning Commission for their review and recommendation. They do the review and recommendation and forward it back to the Board of County Commissioners for you all to have discussions. We do typical work sessions like this, host a public hearing, then you have discussion, decision, and adoption. So what we did with this effort is we convened a work group to, in addition to having public outreach and consensus and discussion with Planning Commission, we wanted to have a work group of people in the agricultural community from all different parts of the ag community, from farmers to businesses, etc. So let me just kind of back up and go over the presentation just a little bit, is that we displayed, how much agricultural, conservation, and then other types of land we have in the county. And I think this still pretty holds true today, maybe a couple digits off, but we have 185,655 acres of agriculturally zoned land in Carroll County, not including the municipality. So the bulk of the zoning in Carroll County, as you can see from the map in front of you on the screen and the ones that Mr. Heim presented to you, is agriculturally zoned. Then we have 57,000 acres of our conservation district. So the little bit of history behind that is when the county initiated zoning in the 60s, we didn't really do ag zoning per se at that point in time. Then we did conservation zoning, which was the most restrictive zoning at that time, which was 1 unit per 3 acres. Ag zone was rural subdivision was allowed up to 1 acre lots, but there wasn't this kind of formula we use today of like basically a 1 unit per 20 acre agricultural zone. So that's why you can see from one of the maps Mr. Heim presented, you see the proliferation of residential homes and communities spread throughout the county. That's just naturally grew up out of our ag zone. And typically, one would say good farms to make good houses, grow good houses, because farm soils are very suited to residential development for all sorts of reasons. So then at some point in time, the decision was made to make the agricultural zone more restrictive in terms of residential units. Then in 2011-2012, the state of Maryland, as part of the SB 236, Senate Bill 236, initiated a law that was called septic tiers. And what the tiers did, and Carroll County did not adopt tiers, we just changed other parts of our code. But if you were outside of a sewer service area and no planned service, you were considered tier 4. And that automatically, doesn't matter what your zoning is, limited you to 7 maximum subdividable lots. No matter what that was. You could have 200 acres, you only get 7 no matter what. No matter what the constraints are or the openness of the property. So that further restricted our agricultural ability to subdivide. And what the state said at that time was anything in your planned sewer service area, S1, S2, S3, you could build as long as you were hooking up at some point to the base density of the zoning and what it was allowed. If you were in tier 4, you could only do that 7 lot minor subdivision. Our majors were considered 4 and over. We changed that law as part of the code to make it 7 and under as a minor subdivision instead of over 4. So that gave us greater flexibility. But beyond that, so for the last 11 years, we've never really adopted a tier platform, meaning we don't have a tier 3 designation in the county. And what the tier 3 does allow you to do is to have residential subdivision, large lot, on well and septic of a major subdivision. And there's a whole process to do that. So that's kind of a little bit of the background of ag zoning and conservation and kind of that whole tiers methodology. Yep.
Pause you for a second. Again, a lot of information. I won't say you're speaking too fast, but I'm trying to catch up, and I feel like I've done this a handful of times with you, but I'm trying to not just write my notes, but comprehend, because it's a lot to comprehend. From the changes that have been made to everything you've described. Can we go back a second? The ag work group, okay? Who was on the ag work group?
Yeah, so the work group, and we also had a concept team approach. So the mission of the agricultural work group was to review the research prepared by the Department of Planning, which Price was the lead of, and how it relates to our zoning chapter and subdivision code. And what we really wanted to look at was to identify challenges within our ag zone, discuss emerging trends such as agritourism, solar, things like that within agricultural lands, the winery brewery issue, and find out what would make sense to move forward within the ag conservation zone. And so what we did was we had input and advice from an interagency concept team, which was internal to the county. So it was planning, it was land and resource management staff, it was ag pres, it was public works, economic development, et cetera, all part of that county attorney's office. And then the work group consisted of people from the agricultural community, soil conservation district, the legal community, the real estate community. We had Kevin Addix, who is now the Secretary of Agriculture, was part of our work group to represent the farm alcohol producer industry. So we really did try to make this all-encompassing and bring the experts in their fields and in Carroll County's agriculture. So here's what we did was we didn't pick specific people. We went to groups themselves, and they designated the person they felt was best suited. So as you can see here, here's the list of the various groups. So we had our Pres Board, Ag Pres, Farm Bureau, Bar Association, that Grow and Fortify that Mr. Addix was a part of, Economic Development. Specifically, we had Diana Hare, who does the agricultural outreach for economic development, and then all of our internal people, including actually the county health department came too. We thought it was important to have them because they help regulate our wells and septics in the county. So from this group and from planning staff, we identified major trends and challenges within the ag and conservation districts. Things that we had heard from elected officials, things that we had heard from the public at large, from staff, things that we had seen go to BZA time and time again that needed to be, we felt, discussed and addressed. So we looked at mainly contractor equipment storage, country inns, which we now have changed to event banquet facilities, commercial kennels, solar energy, agritourism, temporary seasonal uses. Commercial camping was a big one, and not so much commercial camping with a site plan for so many campsite type of thing, but hip camping, which is kind of a trend. I don't even know if it's still a trend. It was a trend a couple of years ago where you would basically pop a squat on someone's property, essentially, and pitch your own tent, or they would provide like a glamping yurt for you to use on their particular property, but it would not be on a specific campsite. It may not have some of the amenities that a campsite has. And we allow those, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, we allow up to 3 of those kind of random, or 2?
No, we allow 1.
Oh, 1, I'm sorry. And the discussion was to allow more than 1, and what would that mean without a real site plan, to know what your road infrastructure would be to get people into the campground, where would your facilities be for camping users. And then we looked at accessory dwelling units, meaning we allowed accessory dwelling units in our agricultural zone, but they had to be attached to the primary unit. And we were looking at a way to increase, frankly, affordable housing in the county, but not change the composition of what the county looked like by allowing detached within the ag zone of the same like as the attached. So the challenges with contractor equipment storage yards were the number of variances, meaning kind of the distance. We have a certain base that we allow, but you can go and ask for additional. So we looked at the number of variances that were being requested. We looked at minimum lot sizes because a lot of these are on smaller lots, but the contractor equipment storage yard facility itself cannot be greater than 1 acre in size, but we noticed there was a lot of creep, meaning that a lot of them were 1 acre, but now their junk or contractors equipment or whatever you want to call it is well beyond that 1 acre threshold. So looking at, should we have a minimum lot size then? So at least if they have that creep, and we're not suggesting that or looking for those, but it would be less obvious to the surrounding community that may have a conflict with that. So we prepared maps of looking at where we had variances, and then we looked at various property sizes around the county. I'm not going to go over this in detail. I'm just pretty much showing you this so you can see the research that went into everything. The next was country inns. Again, this was defined under our zoning code, and we wanted to have a clear distinction between country inns and bed and breakfasts, because a country inn, in order to have that, which allows you to have your kind of event facility and ag land at the time, was you had to have a room available for overnight stay. Where how is it really different than a bed and breakfast, where you have to have a place for people to sleep and a breakfast offered in the morning as part of that. But bed and breakfast did not have the event ability. So should we create, the question was a standalone definition for event facilities, because we were getting a lot of these requests, especially over the last few years with the trend of, farm, rural wedding event type of thing. So that was considered in this process. The next we looked at was commercial kennels. We get a lot of commercial kennel requests, probably behind contractor equipment storage yards. I don't know, they might even be tied for first place with them, but we get a lot of commercial kennels. People love their animals, and there's a lot of animals everywhere, which is great as an animal lover, but there also can be some issues. So we wanted to evaluate where they were in the county and what type of lot size they were on. Agritourism, we looked at the challenge of agritourism and seasonal uses within the zoning code. The state defined agritourism specifically, and we aligned our definition to be with them. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, like in 2019, 2020, and we followed along with the state definition for that.
Wanda, when you have a chance later, could you email us? The
Yeah, I believe
presentation?
Chris also is posting it, so he typically does. But yes, absolutely, we can get this to you.
Thank you very much. So I'm trying to look at some of the smaller words and symbols on this. It's quite
Yeah.
interesting.
So kind of, we mapped out where things were located, and we just thought the barn quotes was really cool, and the little symbology is the actual barn quote on the side of the barns in those areas. Solar, we just had a very brief discussion because, as you know from your recent solar discussions, a couple of years ago, Chris's team, Brenda Denny leading it, did an in-depth review with the EAC over community solar when that became legal in the state of Maryland. So we didn't really touch this too much other than the question, would we want to make it, we want to expand its allowance even more so. And then finally, as I said, the accessory dwelling units, defining and allowing detached and attached as opposed to just the attached. So that was the discussions that we had with the board, and decisions were made. And here was the timeline, as I had talked earlier, about how things progressed from 2014 to 2022 with that completion of the adoption of the Agricultural Conservation District revisions. So this is a really interesting chart I want to share with you. It is basically the decisions that were made and whether they were more or less restrictive. Also in front of you, I took an excerpt from our zoning district explainer, and I apologize, we only did the ag zone, which tells you what the primary principal uses are, what the accessory uses that are allowed, and then what are the uses that require a Board of Zoning Appeal approval. So in most cases, across conservation especially and ag, we made them more restrictive. We made the agricultural district more restrictive, and we made the conservation district more restrictive in terms of uses and the number of uses and the allowances on agricultural remainders. Prior to the code being adopted in December of 2022, you were allowed to have basically unlimited development of non-residential uses on agricultural remaining portions. Meaning, we had certain allowable uses on those remaining portions. You could do a school, you could do a daycare, you could do a religious establishment, all of these different things, but we didn't have a stop measure. So if you had 20 acres, you could fit essentially 20 different of those uses. We limited that based on acreage to a maximum of 3, where it is under 0, I think like 0 to 20. I apologize, I don't have the code in front of me. Or is it
It's 2.
2, I'm sorry, to 2. 0 to 20, you get 1 use. Over 20, you get 2 uses. And so you could do a church or a religious establishment and a daycare together, or you could do a school and a religious establishment, but you couldn't add the third thing, a daycare then on top of that. So we really restricted the agricultural remaining portions. So some of the main highlights of what was done was agritourism. We did a new definition to be similar to the state of Maryland's definition. We deleted the definition of country inn and replaced it with banquet facility, again, to follow trends that are happening to modernize the code. One of the things that the use will no longer require or allow or have to have rooms for rent for overnight guests, and it is no longer permitted in the conservation district, making that more restrictive. We amended the purpose of the districts to now be more in agreement with the zoning code itself. We looked at daycare centers, private schools, and religious establishments as conditional uses, and we made them more restrictive. Many of these were permitted by right, and now added minimum lot sizes and made conditional use requirements for all of those in the ag zone, and in some cases prohibited them in the conservation zone. Accessory dwelling units, this was always allowed, but instead it had to be attached, so just creating the allowance for the detached under the same parameters as the attached. Other types of accessory uses for two districts additional restrictions were placed on home occupations, private stables, storage modules, lawn and maintenance services, production of firewood and mulch, which is a really big topic, along with sawmills. So looking at those and made those more restrictive. Contractor equipment storage yard, both indoor and outdoor, will be allowed conditional use in the ag district, and will have separation requirements, minimums. And contractor equipment storage will be more restrictive in terms of it will only be allowed now on districts of at least 5 acres as opposed to what we had it before. So again, to make it more restrictive and have less conflict with the residential houses that are commonly found in the agricultural zone. And then the same thing with commercial kennels, as well as having that minimum acreage requirement as well. So that's the major changes to 158, which is your zoning code. 155, a subdivision. And the two things that changed there, one I already mentioned, the agricultural remaining portions, limiting the amount of those on ag zone land, and then cluster development. And what happened here was we made it the same as we have cluster subdivision in the residential districts as well. And what we had done in the residential districts, and Laura Matthias can explain this much better than I can, but basically when you came through the site planning process and you had a cluster subdivision, you had to show two plans, a conventional and then the cluster plan. And you had to show that you could do the conventional and how that would transfer into the cluster. We just followed that same premise over into the agricultural and conservation district for clustered subdivisions.
What is a clustered subdivision?
So it is the same amount of lots allowed as in the regular subdivision, but to conserve more open space, especially open space that may be, has some environmental restrictions. You cluster the lots together, you make them closer together to preserve more open space.
What restricts how closer together you can do? Just
So it depends on what district you're in. It varies, but the ag district, two things. I would say our rural subdivision requirements, we require 1 acre minimum in the ag zone. But I think more importantly is the health department has changed their standards for septic, where really under 2 acres, it's really hard to have your primary and your backup secondary septic drain field that you would need in case of a failure.
So it's not just allowing, it's more taking advantage of open space opportunities, isn't it?
For
when you cluster property.
Well, right, you're creating permanent open space with that.
Right. But I mean, it's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very good thing, I think.
Community, you're allowing for parks and other opportunities for common use in an area.
Particularly if I remember correctly, particularly if some of that land you couldn't build a house on,
Right.
so it was just going to sit there
Right.
anyway. So it was an opportunity for the clustering
Yeah.
to maintain the
Yeah.
yieldable lots, if you will. So that was often the case from what
Yeah.
I remember
Yep.
my time with the BCC.
So that is all I have prepared for you. I wasn't quite sure the direction you wanted to go, and I just wanted to lay the groundwork for what was done over the last several years and what some of the major changes were, and then the outcome obviously is in the zoning explainer that you have in front of you.
Okay. No, I appreciate you gave us a lot of information. Appreciate the maps. Really, it's what we've done in the past is just kind of open it up where we want to take it. What are your concerns? Our concerns?
Or questions.
Or questions to either Pierce and the others, or you know, the talking
Piers Morgan?
heads, yeah.
Could you very briefly go back into Tier 3 again?
Oh, the tiers?
So the tiers, so, you know, it's basically de facto land use control from the state, where if you are in the, if we had designated a Tier 3, it would allow for large lot subdivision on well and septic, essentially.
An argument being made down in the Freedom District is the one piece of property, the Zabel property, that, you know, it's currently not on,
Well and septic.
no. it
No,
is.
but it actually is an approved water and sewer.
No,
Yeah.
but currently it is on well and septic. It's an improved sewer and water and sewer.
Sorry.
Correct. Is there? I don't even know if there's a dwelling on that property. There's no dwelling, so it's vacant.
Yeah, but right now it's well and septic, but it's, for our planning, it is planned for water and sewer.
I would just clarify, because there is no development, so it doesn't matter. Even if it was in the, like the Beatty property, let's just say,
Okay.
you could, that house is on well and septic on the Beatty property, but it's in the service area. So I wouldn't confuse the
Okay.
two, because it's not developed. It's raw land. There's not even a house on it. And it could be developed on it could be developed on water and sewer.
Okay, so
Actually cannot be developed on well and septic at Anna, because it is in the sewer service area. The health department will not allow it.
So the argument or discussion that's been brought up from the community that only 7 lots could be built on that isn't a true argument.
No, that is not. Back, if water and sewer had not been, if the category had not changed to priority with the last triennial update 5 years ago, because we're a little behind, then that would be true. So in the last plan, the 2001 plan, it was not recognized to be on water and sewer. But in the 2018 Freedom Plan, it was recognized to be in water and sewer, and the water and sewer master plan was updated to conform with that.
So therefore, the whole discussion about 7 lots is not a valid
Correct.
discussion. Okay.
Correct.
I appreciate that, because that's an point of clarification as we're talking about these properties and growth of these properties in the designated growth areas. Now, regarding the Beatty property, currently, is it allowed to be more than 7 lots?
Yep, it's on water and sewer.
So it's all on water and sewer, so therefore...
Actually, sewer lines and water lines actually run through it that the county used to extend to other communities surrounding it.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted, I kind of knew some of the answer. I just wanted to get it out there that, you know, people are saying, oh, it only can have 7 lots because they're looking at Tier 4, but it's not a true statement if it's on water and sewer and/or it's in the master plan that water and sewer will
If it's in the priority, and actually the health department will not allow subdivision and development to occur on well and septic if you are in a priority or a future service category. You can't, they won't allow it. You have to build on water and sewer. or else we would have to go back through the process and amend the plan.
Okay. I just want to make sure that's clear with everybody that, okay. So what where do we want to go with this?
Well, I have a couple thoughts, and since I'm sort of mostly partly responsible for us gathering here, I thought I'd come with a statement. But again, I appreciate the briefing because, you know, one of the pitfalls of getting four new commissioners in, you just did the study, I think was it March 2022 when you completed it? So thanks for bringing that to our attention and letting us learn about that. It's put a lot of work into it. I've got a couple comments. Maybe it'll help us move forward, and it'll certainly relay my concerns. So, wrote a couple things down. All zoning ordinances include a list of defined terms, a list of defined zones with statements of purpose, separate use tables for each zone, and a list of uses contemplated within that given table. When we evaluate a particular use, we first ask if it is appropriately defined. If not, we need to craft a proper definition. We then ask in which zones that use should be permitted by right, conditional use, or is prohibited. To answer that question, we need to understand the purpose of each zone, which brings us to this work session today. If the purpose of the zone conflicts with the proposed use, we suggest that it should be prohibited. If the purpose of the zone might conflict with the proposed use, that's when it becomes conditional. I say we because as commissioners, under the commissioner form of government, the legislative powers that determine these overreaching principles does in fact lie with us. It's my opinion that the Carroll County zoning ordinance, and I know a lot of work was recently done on this particular zoning, but it's my opinion that the zoning ordinance, in particular to those that pertain to the agricultural zoning ordinance, still needs some updates and some more relevant definitions. There's a lot of examples of this. Obviously, we just went through a very long solar debate, and that is still ongoing. You mentioned agritourism. The definition of agritourism looks like it sort of continues to evolve. We've had a couple public hearings regarding that, and that word has been used. We have had issues where, you know, there's an agricultural use and things, I use the term mission creep, but things have sort of evolved, or I'll just use the term evolved into something else. You know, things like, you know, some of the things that are listed here. What is a retreat facility? I'm proposing, and again, I know this was just done last year, but I'm proposing a review of this use table to identify where uses are permitted by right, there's accessory uses permitted by conditional use, or things should be prohibited. If the purpose of the zone directly reflects the proposed use, we suggest it should be permitted by right. If the purpose of the zone conflicts with the proposed use, then of course it should be prohibited. And again, it starts with simple definitions, and that was my biggest concern, and that's one of the reasons I wanted us to be sitting down today. Let's not forget, we, the commissioners, have a duty to protect our precious resources. That's children, neighborhoods, our schools, families, and our agriculture. And what does that mean exactly? Right out of the Citizens Guide, it lists 3 specific things that we should be doing. And I think as commissioners, it's our duty that we provide for continued farming activities, that we conserve agricultural land, and that we reaffirm agricultural use, activities, and operations as the preferred dominant use of that land, except in certain circumstances. So I want to be clear, there are 14 approved principal uses. There's 19 accessory uses, and there's 37 conditional uses, and those require BZA approval. The discussion for me is not about restrictions, it's about definitions and some of the unforeseen problems we're going to face and will face if we're not proactive with a couple of these evolving definitions, particularly in the conditional use. So that's why, that was my impetus, if you will, for wanting to sit down and have this discussion today, because we've only been in office for about 6 months, but we've spent a lot of time on issues in the agricultural zone. And you know, hopefully none of us are going anywhere for a while. So I thought it was something that would be worth taking a look at. But for me, it really comes down to defined terms. I mean, what are these definitions, and do some of them need to be updated?
And I guess I'm looking at this one. You list uses.
Yep.
And principal, accessory, conditional, but many of those uses have further restrictions.
sure. So this is not meant to be, let me be clear, the zoning code. I have the zoning code pulled up. So with all of the definitions that we reviewed and updated. Yep.
Yes, yeah, so, whatever, a wedding facility, an event facility, it has restrictions. A kennel is hard to fit on a property, a commercial kennel. It's a lot of restrictions, and like our solar companies just did, there's people out there looking for property that would potentially have a kennel. And it's not, it's more definitions and more qualifications, restrictions, I think, than a lot of people think there are.
So,
And I don't know, like, obviously, we don't wanna look at every one today, but is there one that's a good example to show how it's further, or not really?
Because
I think everyone has, so let me just hold on really quickly. So you have zoning code, which regulates the use. Then you have your other chapters, 155 and 156, that regulate the bulk requirements, the setback requirements, the distance requirements. So that even further restricts. So if you think of it this way, master plan kind of general guiding, then you kind of get into your regulations, and then even zoning's less specific than the site and subdivision, because that gets really into the nitty gritty of where things can go. And Laura Matthias can speak to that, but you're right. So it's kind of like a funnel. And then finally the building permit. And then once you build the building structure, that's a whole nother, issue and restrictive of what the building itself can and can't be.
So I didn't know about this work session until it came out on the, I mean, nobody, asked, said, hey, what do you think about this? So I'm not sure why, but I wasn't. The work we did in the last Board of County Commissioners, and really just last year, was outstanding.
Thank you.
The work group that Price led with the community and the staff was really outstanding. The definitions that we all participated in once it was presented to us, it's very clear. We sat around this table and did exactly what you're saying. So my question is, one, is there an expectation to do this every 4 years in a development process or review process, which is fine, If there are specific questions on definitions, because we all participated in definitions, let's bring them up. Let's say, here are the definitions, and go through them. I mean, I don't know. I want to be pragmatic about this. This is not political. This is not throwing, interest to the community saying, I don't want growth here, I don't want that. No, what do we want to do? How do we define it? And how do we move forward? I mean, we've got too much on our plate to run for office right now.
And I understand that, and again, I'm not dismissing what the last group did. A lot of it I objected to, including the solar. And like for instance, and you've explained some of it already today, because I look at everything with the cursory. I did not watch hours of you guys sitting here doing it, but like I was miffed that equipment storage yards the acreage got larger, because there's so many small septic companies that have trouble finding one in Carroll County, so they end up going to another county for a yard. And it seemed like we made it harder, but like you described, there was creep, and there was, again, we talked this morning, I guess I can't even say we talked this morning, but we've talked in prior times, we're complaint driven, that always comes up. And so if somebody creeps to double the size they're allowed, we don't have the luxury of having 45 people that ride around Carroll County and look for that stuff. And I think that's a lot of the issues I talked to somebody yesterday that has an event site, and that person I joked about it, and I said, if they're limited to 100 people, every time I come to her house, she goes, "I'm sorry, we already have 100 people, you have to leave." But she is that strict with it. Others flat out cheat on everything, and we probably can't make enough rules to make sure that doesn't happen. But it's hard, and like I say, it's learning. I'm learning a lot more just listening to this.
Yeah.
I still object to some of the things you guys did, but
Which is
I'm
fine.
learning more why.
Yeah, but that's fine. You know, disagreeing with decisions made.
Yeah.
I have no problems. I'm just saying, if we're sitting here, let's do it. I mean, what topic, what definition do we want to define? Do we want to say this makes sense? Let's move forward to the next definition.
So
you know, that's my point. Is I just want to get something done. And if we're good with it, then let's move on to the next.
So to Commissioner Carter's earlier point really quickly, this is just an example of the use table. We didn't have use tables before this code revision, but what is in here is what is the description, the land use category, if it's permitted or conditional, and then additional regulations. So for ag, it's permitted, but 158.002, 158.035, 158.040, and then we even have for any greenhouse, heating plant, or any building or feeding pens in which farm animals are kept. There's even additional on top of that. So each use has additional regulations where they are permitted for the most part. So you can see just going through that. So we went through each one of these topics, individual word by word, page by page.
And just, yeah, because this is what we did. This is how we created this, which I thought was, and I still believe, is user-friendly. It's a quick access. I was not in favor as much conditional usage. I was much more of a black and white type of guy. Either allow it or not allow it. I got, beaten down. I was, not in the majority of many of those conversations because my colleagues at that time who were more familiar with agricultural communities said that they should have that conditional, that we're, let's say, above 140. And that was fine. I mean, again, it went against the grain of me. I'm much more of a black and white guy. But we had those conversations. So I just recommend, let's pick, I don't know, if it's low-hanging fruit, that is the most concerned, of all of these, let's start and move forward.
Well, I appreciate your comments because, I do think we're not going to have one of these reviews every year. I think that would be asking too much. And you use the term pragmatism. I would agree with that. Now, of course, that probably drives the county staff a little crazy, but I think it's probably the right way to proceed. And for people watching, we're talking about these ordinances and definitions. Well, can the commissioners change those things? Yes, we can. That's part of our job. I've mentioned a couple times to remind people, we have legislative and executive powers, and we should be using them. Once those are there, we might have little power to change things, but it is within our right and our duty to constantly take a look at these. You mentioned solar. That's obviously a big one. The issue with the storage facility over in Elvisburg, that's another one. It's within our right to take a look at the bulk requirements, which are the different, the spatial requirements and everything, to see if maybe those in particular areas are, proper or not. And again, I mentioned we've had a couple. It seems like just the list is growing of certain projects or businesses in agriculture or zoning, where there's that creep involved. For me, there is one glaring example of something that's wrong. So down in my district, District 4, there was a case recently involving a nursing home in an agricultural district that was surrounded by residential homes. This is a nursing home with about 60 plus beds, that is the proposals to make it into a plus 64-bed treatment facility, drug treatment facility for, I think it was level 3.2 to 3.5 people requiring treatment in there. The argument and the definition for nursing homes allowed for that treatment facility to happen. It is my view, and I know the Webster's Dictionary changes year to year, but it was my view that...
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Would you pull up the definitions again? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I could not understand.
Don't worry about it.
No, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I appreciate
don't worry
it.
about
It was my strong view that a drug treatment facility in agricultural, which is a conditional use, is not a nursing home. I mean, that's how everybody felt that was sitting in that room. The appeal was approved. The nursing home, which is actually going to become a 60-plus bed treatment facility, is going to be approved, and I feel that that's wrong. And that severely is impacting people that live in that residential neighborhood. Now, this is being repeated all across the county, and there's certain projects taking place in residential neighborhoods, and I know we're not here to talk about that today. But what really was concerning for me was to sit there during summation and have a member of the BZA say, well, when people moved into that neighborhood in 1990, the nursing home was approved there, so they knew what they were getting into. Okay, that is 33 years ago. And the comment being made, well, nursing home means treatment facility, and the people that live there should have known what they were getting into. I think as commissioners, we got to do a little better than that. I don't think that's a good answer. So that was one of my main impetuses for, trying to get this meeting today, but also recognizing the fact that we are spending a lot of our time as commissioners talking about conditional uses, in particular in the ag. So I think something does need to be done, and I'm glad we're having the discussion.
No, I think it's really well said. And I'll tell you, I don't know where I was yesterday, but I made a comment that the enemy has a vote, and time, the environment, has a vote, and it changes. So, yeah, what was allowed 40-plus years ago is that something that should be allowed today if the environment has changed, and so in the community. So I appreciate that, and I agree with you on that. Absolutely. Now, that may be a good conditional usage. I don't know. I mean, we can definitely look at, and then, is the BZA structured appropriately, taking in all of the issues to be considered? Is there recourse from a decision made from the BZA? Because we know that it's very difficult, and that also may be something that we should be looking at as well.
I think that's set out in state law.
I understand that.
I'm just
I get it, but it's still if it's state law, that's fine. If we don't agree with it, we can talk to the legislators at state and say, this is becoming way too restrictive, and it's overreach, like you say, of, government doing this. So it may be something to consider, because you're absolutely right. We have a responsibility to define and to make what right looks like, both executive and legislative. Going back to your point is, if we create something that's legislative and we don't have the ability to really govern it, and everybody takes advantage of it, then we also have an issue, because, it's a law that nobody listens to. And we got to be careful of that. Again, not to overreach on, I won't say silly laws, but legislation that doesn't necessarily get enforced.
So a nursing home is a conditional use in the ag zone. I don't know about conservation, but in the ag zone. And here's the definition if the board wants to look at it. I think you can close the left hand. Yeah, so it's maybe easier to read or bigger. I don't know that helped. But.
Is there some words?
Do you want to read it, Linda?
Sure. It says a resident. Oh, I thought that made it easier, so you didn't have to look for it. Okay. So a residential healthcare facility which provides institutional lodging, nursing care, personal care, and supervision to aged, chronically ill, physically infirm, or convalescent patients who are not related to the owner or administrator of the facility.
So again, I don't want to belabor this particular point, but the story I just told for all the other commissioners sitting around here, hopefully you can empathize with the situation down there. But if we want to call something a nursing home, then let's call it a nursing home. If we want to call it a drug treatment facility, let's call it a drug treatment facility. Let's not start off with definitions of definitions, and that's the pitfall we run into.
And I understand that. My problem is a large percentage of the people that don't want something next door didn't do their due diligence, don't understand what the law is, and they don't want a damn thing next door to them, including probably a house. And we can't fix that. And I understand this. We've all been touched by people that need recovery. I don't know that I think a recovery facility in that building is much worse than a nursing home. I don't understand the fear of having that next door. And I think I shared this story before. In the 70s, I bought a lot. And one of the things we talked about, and I said, that farm behind us is going to be annexed into Manchester. It's going to be 5 houses to the acre. Our choice is, don't buy this lot, buy that farm, or watch it happen. And it took 20, 25 years, but it happened. And I objected to one lot because they tried to pull one out of our subdivision and violate the covenants on our subdivision. But I never objected to the development that happened because, and you hate my expression, but Ray Charles could see that was going to happen sooner or later. And if somebody, and I had neighbors that wanted to object to it, and I'm like, I was here 5 years before you were, I'm sorry, that's totally legal and going to happen. Now, I do have a problem with some of the things I've been involved with where we'll say, okay, well, that nursing home, it doesn't need a legal driveway. It doesn't, that's just going to make them have to do more storm management and sediment control. We want to save them money. Well, I think that's wrong. I think they got to have everything legally right to maintain that facility, but it's allowed there. And I feel much more strongly about the mini storage. If I bought that lot next to commercial property, I would have had the same discussion with my wife and family and said, this could be whatever. If I bought on Meadow Branch Road and said, C.J. Miller might build a blacktop plant there, then I can't complain when they do. I think we got to watch. Do we want to have good definitions? Do we want to make sure people understand we got to do our best? And I argued about recovery facilities in particular. We have 170,000 people in Carroll County. If 6 of them get up in arms about something, I'm not sure we need to change it. We're changing too much for a small minority of people that don't understand the definitions, and I feel for them, but so and understand what you're saying. We need to educate everybody, and that's one of the things I like about this. I don't know how many people pay attention to what we're doing today, but people need to understand.
I appreciate the discussion, and I appreciate the point of education. Not everybody is listening to us. Not everybody reads the Carroll County Times. Not everybody goes on social media and looks at certain sites or whatever it is. So how do we capture as much of this information as best as possible, looking at as many different ways, these definitions, to spew out, to get out to as much of the community, because I'm just going to tell you, being a Jew helps, because during Passover, there's 4 kids. It's the wise kid, right, Linda? And, the thoughtless or the mean kid, the kid who's very simple, and the kid who doesn't even know how to ask the question. And it's our responsibility to provide the answers to those that are not, that are wise, that are nasty, that are simple, and that don't even know how to ask the question. How do we do that from our community, from our approach? We're not going to hit everybody, but that's part of the challenge. Because like you said, there may be this small group of 8 people that are yelling. And what about the wider, that don't even know this is going on, you know? We just had this situation last week with the Westminster Mission.
Oh, the rescue mission.
I'll tell you, I was really upset that we turned down that block grant for the right reasons because she couldn't get there. But I'm like, what a perfect piece of property to support a community that needs that support. And I was really just frustrated that it was a few people that didn't care for that. And I don't know if we didn't do enough due diligence to get it around to everybody, but if we think of it that way, again, not being parochial about this, how do we get these definitions out so it's not a surprise? So it's not, wait, a storage facility is being built here? How can that happen? It's because that property was zoned commercial, and being zoned commercial, it allowed for this type of bulk, growth to happen. Should that have changed? The environment changes. We should look at this. But I want to get back to being not so theoretical but pragmatic. Let's look at some of these definitions. What are the ones that are really popping out at us that we want further clarity to answer those type of questions, and let's figure it out.
Well, to your point on that, if I might, Linda, I can't read the entire text there for nursing home. I know it says personal care and supervision, and then it cuts off. I can't see the rest of that.
Supervision to aged.
Okay, that's fine. Just stop.
Chronically ill.
Just stop right there.
Yeah.
So just for everybody's information, I just spent the last minute, if that, Googling what is the term aged. The term aged, it refers to elderly people who have reached an advanced age. This is multiple sites that state this. Now, aging is the process of growing older. So I'm not debating, treatment. I think it's definitely needed. Kenny and I have had that conversation a multitude of times within the community. I think my question is, if we're going by definition, the word aged is incorrect.
Well, no.
There's
an
more
or
to it.
after that.
Okay.
There's an or after that, so.
But if we're talking about aged by definition is not anybody in their 40s. It would be, according to this, it says
but
people.
it says or.
Yeah.
Well, no, so what it says is residential health care facility which provides institutional lodging, nursing care, personal care, and supervision to aged, chronically ill people, physically infirm people, or convalescent patients who are not related to the owner or administrator of the facility. So drug treatment patients could be considered chronically ill, and they do fall.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah, so that's.
And I think getting back to Commissioner Rothstein's point about the unfortunate situation the other week with that grant, what I do find really interesting, and none of us have the answer and none of us can solve this, but from the grant perspective, they needed the neighbor's approval. And I find that intriguing in that they need the neighbor's approval for a grant, be it federal or state, whichever. But then on the flip side, if someone wants to set up a residential treatment facility, not saying they're wrong, not saying they're right, they can do that without any discussion within the neighbors. Whereas, and that obviously is state related, so that's not something we have control over. But it's quite a variance between those two. It's quite extreme.
The grant was just to give them money. They could still build it. Even if they didn't have, if they had their own money, they could build it.
Sure.
But
and I think
yeah.
too, because like you, I found that horrible.
Yeah.
But I think we didn't kill it. They were pulling it because they knew they'd have trouble getting their grant.
Correct.
But like you say, if you'd have said, "Hey, I'll give you the money," they could have said, "Okay, I'm doing it."
Absolutely.
And it wouldn't have been stopped. But it's tough. And I agree with you. The age it makes it look funny, but there's an or after it, so it doesn't have to be. And it's tough. And And I think when we either want to do something or we want to oppose something, we try to look at it and harder than we would normally, and it's tough. And I think we got to watch what changes we make. And I'll use solar as an example. Like I say, I objected to that, and I've always been a lands rights person, but all of those houses, all of those streets, all that stuff was there way before that rule got changed a couple years ago. And so I had more empathy for them than I would for somebody with a mini storage that's been, and you can quibble about the wording on the zoning, but it's essentially been okay to build it there long before most of those people moved there. And that gives it a different perspective for me. So I think while I agree, Commissioner Guerin, there's things probably need to be changed, we have to be very cautious about that we don't. So many times when you make a change because of one or two instances, 5 years later you regret it because, oh my gosh, there's other special cases, there's other unintended consequences.
And then you have non-conforming use.
What's it?
And then you have non-conforming use.
Exactly.
Which
yes,
we want to
exactly.
minimize.
Yes,
I
yes.
mean,
yeah, you also have that as an unintended consequence. Yep.
So. Yeah.
Sure. So a couple of thoughts. Why do I sound so much louder than everybody else?
You're actually talking into your microphone.
I'm doing what I'm supposed to do.
Right. Thank you.
So 3 points. So first of all, to Commissioner Rothstein's idea about how do we disseminate information to residents about where they live and what surrounds them. I know we have the app, the C-Click Report or Click C.
C-Click Report.
C-Click
You
Report.
right?
Is there some kind of an app or some kind of I don't know, GIS or GPS app where I can put in my address
Yes.
and I can see what the zoning is around?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yes, it's
Okay.
available.
Yeah, it's all
So can
on the
we-
website.
You can have it on your mobile phone.
Is there a way that we can, I don't know, put that out on our social media or on our somewhere easily identifiable on the website? Because that might help.
Yeah,
Because
no, it is on social media, and I know some of these blogs have promoted it. The ArcGIS, yeah, and it's definitely available. So it is.
maybe some
you know,
marketing as far as that's
yes.
concerned.
So,
Yes, I'm sorry. No, please.
No,
I
no,
apologize.
go
No,
ahead.
Roberta, please.
no, finish your points. I'm sorry. I didn't realize.
No, that's okay. I mean, if you were going to talk about
Go
the...
ahead, Commissioner.
Okay. So the second thought to Commissioner Guerin with the nursing home and the drug treatment facility dichotomy, the difference there, I think it is a valid point. And while I understand that there is an argument to be made for someone who is addicted to be identified as being chronically ill, I think it's also important to recognize that there is a difference between somebody who may have Alzheimer's and may have addiction, and that out of respect for somebody who needs one treatment or the other, there has to be some kind of distinguishing definition made between the two. The kind of treatment that somebody who is dealing with drugs or drug addiction is going to be something completely different than somebody who is dealing with diseases that come naturally with age. So my suggestion would be that if we are going to talk about definitions for nursing homes, we may have to create a separate category for a drug treatment facility. So my third point would be that something that I would like to see in the future, I know I don't want to drag things out today or whatever, but something I'd like to see for the future, and this goes back to some of the points that have been raised earlier as well. I'd like to see, and you can make something up. I think I'd given an example in an email about maybe a church being converted into a coffee shop. Two uses that are ontologically distinct from each other. If I was the owner of a former church, how I would go about from converting that church into a coffee shop, as an example.
Jay can answer that.
Okay. Or on that note, relatedly, an evolving use that is very similar to what I have now. So, for example, if I was to develop, say, a mini golf course into a full-fledged golf course, or if I was to convert I think it was a country inn into a bed and breakfast. Because I think those are the sorts of uses that you may be referring to, Commissioner Guerin, about that evolving set of uses, or the evolving kind of use.
So before we go there,
Yes.
if you don't mind,
Okay.
can I speak to your second point?
Yes,
Because
please.
that's exactly where I was going. So there are federal restrictions on federal fair housing law that prohibit basically discrimination in housing. But I've been communicating with our legal advisors, and if the board were interested, we'd have to do some research to make sure that we wouldn't be running afoul of those kinds of laws. But we think that it's possible we could distinguish nursing homes from large drug treatment facilities. There are very restrictive rules on small drug treatment facilities, those small homes that a organization may buy and place, less than a certain number of people
So
in.
like small, like 8 people or something like that?
We can't
Yeah.
regulate those
So-
in any way, shape, or
But,
form. But for these
yeah.
large, we think there might be. So if the board had an appetite we do not have a definition for drug treatment facility, I'm
No, we
assuming.
treat it as assisted living or nursing home.
Right. So if the board wanted to, I would suggest then the next step would be to send this to the planning commission. Is that correct? Eventually.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be today, but so if the board were interested, it would be the planning commission who would take up the idea of looking into that, right?
So, but if I could suggest, I think further clarification from the county attorney's office regarding how far and what are our limitations?
Right, because we certainly don't want to, before we go there, yeah, for
Yes.
sure, because we definitely don't want to run afoul of fair housing law.
So, are we good with that?
I don't know.
Just as a step?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you.
Housing
Just
institutions,
wanted-
we could define it.
And if there are so in terms of process, just to sidetrack, in terms
Sure.
of process, if there were other concerns that commissioners had in terms of these definitions, because the definitions are important. I mean, that's where everything starts.
Absolutely.
That's where the zoning administrator, I've seen him in these BZA meetings, he's got his definitions in front of him.
Yep.
That's where he's working off of. So if we have additional concerns, I'd like for us to have the opportunity to raise those within the next week or two. And Commissioner Rossi, you mentioned commercial, industrial, and that is a little stickier. You're absolutely right. If you live in a residential neighborhood and you're adjacent to a commercial or industrial area, you got to know something might be coming down the pike. However, if you live in a residential neighborhood and there's a sliver of agricultural land and this use is about to take place on it where people are unsupervised, not obligated to stay right there, and within walking distance to Krim Gold Park, you'll start to pay attention. And that's what I'm doing. We dealt with this with solar. We started getting tons of emails. You've had your own fun with the storage facility in Ellisburg where you get 250 people to show up at a meeting. So
Also Freedom Park, because you have the RSS right there across the street, and on Buttercup, and you also have the prison, but
The correctional facility.
The correctional facility, but the RSS, you would have people.
Well, and you have
walk
Shoemaker as well. There's
from
two.
that's a little far down, but they would walk over to Freedom. So
Yeah.
same.
So, I mean,
It's like identical to what you're just describing.
yeah, it's where what's going on in
Yeah.
the community and what you're hearing meets pragmatism, and then we start to, as a commission sometimes
I
start working these
absolutely agree.
issues. So I don't want to belabor things. I've mentioned that before, but I think that might be the way forward that we mentioned.
So if I may suggest, we'll have legal counsel look at the issue here to see whether we would we're on firm legal footing by creating a separate definition, and then we can bring that information back to you. While we're dealing with definitions, and I'm not going to forget your accessory use question, while we're dealing with definitions, are there other definitions you'd like potentially modify, to look at, to explore? And then we'll turn it over to Jay to explain accessory uses or change in use, I should say.
And I guess I'd be curious, we all need to look at it because, again, we're complaint driven, but I'd be curious what staff thinks too, because you have tweaked things because you've seen issues that happen more than once. And then one thought before
Yeah,
we
like
get
the
in-
contractor equipment storage yards, yeah.
Before we get into the accessory use, The other thing is communication, and I don't know how far you go with it. Young families always ask the realtor what school.
Right.
Now, I've never heard anybody say, and they could have said it the last 4 years, well, right now it's Hampstead Elementary School, but the commissioners are strongly pushing that we redistrict. You know, and I know, again, I've told people, okay, well, you're Hampstead Elementary, but you're kind of right on the line.
Yeah.
You know, it could be tough, but is there any kind of information we could give to home
Realtors?
buyers, realtors, whatever, that would say, you know, okay, well, I'm on 42 in Hampstead, across the road is all commercial property, but no, and we certainly can't make
They
a
do
law.
come
that-
in.
It's all available to them.
Oh, it's all available, but people don't look. I mean,
I didn't look.
you know, again, to go back to your mini storage, there's
Yeah.
people that even actually said, no, you're wrong, it wasn't zoned for that. They don't believe it after they
I
look.
get you.
But
And-
I don't know how we fix that, but the more communication
No,
we can get
I
out, the
got you.
better.
So are there other, can we identify other definitions and then?
I want to take a look. I want to continue to take a look. So I may have others
Or is there anyone else?
as we go
Oh.
forward. And I think Commissioner Rothstein brought up an interesting point too about the cold conditional use issue. I mean, I'm kind of a black and white person as well. So, I mean, just in terms of, and again, I'm talking about agricultural zoning, folks, not commercial and not residential and not industrial. But do we need to consider that there's 37? And is that appropriate? Again, it's about definitions, not restrictions, but that may be something we want to consider.
And to me, no, I appreciate it because it's expectation management of the property owner. And when you put in conditional uses, you're expanding the expectation management. And, you know, I'd rather them, he or she, understand this is what they can and cannot do. Like I said, I won't say I was voted down, but, and I understand that properties have the uniqueness in different properties. That's why conditional uses were, you know, more inclusive or added in more than I would have liked. But like I said, I feel like we did a very good job. I think taking another look at the definitions, wordsmithing them, taking away any of the subjectivity, you know, so it doesn't put people in a bind, especially when they go into the BZA, is important. You know, if we can split definitions, like nursing home and large drug treatment facilities, that's fine. Well, the RSS is in Sykesville proper, so I don't know what
No,
that's.
it's on Springfield.
It's federal property, yeah, or state property. I'm sorry. Yeah,
But
so
it's, yeah,
yeah,
but it's still.
I guess it's state.
We own it.
Right.
It's ours. So.
But I don't know what the property is itself,
I
except
don't-
state.
I think it's on the Springfield.
It's on Springfield and
campus.
it's state, yeah.
It's DGS
campus.
owned.
Yeah.
Yeah, so okay. But yeah, I'll tell you, when I bought the house, I was clueless. I still am clueless, but I was clueless in buying a house. And, you know, fortunately it worked out. I had great neighbors. I have great neighbors, you know, in a great community where I'm living. But it could have gone sideways because I just didn't know. And so, yeah.
So it sounds like the board wants to look again at this and convene again, maybe in another couple weeks. Jay, do you want to?
And actually, with respect to my question, I apologize. I would much rather have that in the form of like a presentation that I could look at and write on, rather than just have the question responded to now, if that's okay. Like if you could create something that just says, okay, well, create like an informational presentation which would give me like an illustrated example of how one business or how one use becomes another use, rather than just trying to answer it off the cuff here today, if that's okay.
Can we do both?
Sure.
Just a brief, just so everybody has a little understanding before they leave, and then we'll
Sure.
follow up with more detail.
Thank you.
Okay. To your question, Commissioner, about changing a church to a coffee shop, if it was in the agricultural district, that could not happen because a coffee shop is a retail business, which is not allowed in the ag zoning district. However, if you took an existing church, and there are a few of them in the county that have been converted to a residence, that's going from a conditional use, or actually a church principal use, to another principal use, which perfectly fine, you can do that. As long as it's changing from a principal use to a principal use, it's perfectly fine. If it's changing from a principal use to possibly a conditional use, well, they have to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals. But if they're changing from a church to something that's prohibited in the ag zoning district, flat out, can't happen.
So similar to this situation that Commissioner Guerin referred to, a nursing home is a conditional use in the ag zone. So they had to go, even though they were staying a nursing home, they went to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a modification of their conditional use, basically. I think that's a proper way. Is that
Basically,
right?
what they were doing, they were told that they were a nursing home before, and it was approved as that, and they didn't have to go to the BZA to get that changed. It was a nursing home, and they fit that definition. They decided to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals just to get it out in the open and get a confirmation vote from the board that, yes, it's a nursing home. So that was the reason for that hearing.
Thank you for the clarification.
And since you're on that hearing.
Thank you very
How
much.
is that appealable?
If you appeal a decision of the Board of Zoning Appeals, you have 30 days from the written decision to appeal it to court, circuit court.
Circuit court.
Yeah, so they can take the next
So
step.
it is appealable.
It involves expensive attorneys, but beyond that.
Well, there's some cheap ones out there.
Where? Please tell me.
So,
Cheap in stature.
yeah, right. No, so unless there's something else.
Yeah, one more thing, since at least two of us are very concerned about conditional uses, and I don't know how easy or hard this is. Yes, there's a number of them. I'm not sure, and I'm in an ag area, I'm not sure that a rubble landfill or slaughterhouse is going to go in next door to me. You know, there's a lot of restrictions on the conditional uses. They can't go every place. And I don't know how we qualify that or let.
So you're saying you want the conditional uses staying in place? or
I'm
you
fine
want-
with conditional
I see.
uses
Okay,
as they are.
okay, got it.
But
Okay.
I'm saying, if
Yeah.
we're concerned that there's so many.
Yeah.
There's, like I said, even
Yeah.
a golf course, a kennel, there's very few properties in Carroll
Correct.
County they fit on.
Right. Correct.
So they're not gonna, 20 of them aren't gonna pop up in your neighborhood, because even though they're conditional use, because they don't fit. But I don't know how you
Yeah. Oh, I understand.
better communicate that.
I would just caution too, as we review these and you're looking at the definitions and you're looking at the use tables, I know it's only going to the ag zone, but it has a ripple effect on the other zoning districts, first and foremost. If it is a legal use, you cannot zone it out of existence. So if we make it prohibited in the ag zone, has to go somewhere. And if it's not anywhere else in the county, you got to put it somewhere else. So where would that somewhere else be? So as you go through that, there's a domino effect with each change that you make. And I would want to be curious to hear from the legal team whether assisted living, nursing home, and drug treatment facility would have to be treated differently. So even though you're creating a new definition, I think under the Federal Fair Housing Act, you can't treat them differently. So if you say drug treatment facilities are prohibited, but nursing home and assisted livings are permitted, you got to make them all prohibited. So you just can't discern one from the other. So I'd just be very careful as we look for this thing. So even though you're defining them differently, that's great, but would it be treated any differently? And that's the standard that we're going to be held to.
And don't put everything in the industrial area, because we have very limited industrial space. And properties that go into industrial, especially if they are tax exempt, we're losing opportunity, of revenue coming into the county. So sometimes we say, oh, let's just put it in industrial. Well, we're very limited in industrial right now.
And unfortunately, some of these small recovery facilities are giving a bad name to recovery facilities, and the large ones, I'd be curious. I know Springfield has one, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we're
You
talking
know,
about, Shoemaker and
yeah,
RSS.
Yeah, is it a nuisance to the neighborhood?
No.
Or- No, it's well
Well,
controlled.
it-
And so a large one, I'd be more comfortable with, unfortunately, than one of the little ones, because like you say, they don't seem to be very regulated, and they all seem to cheat. You know, I dealt with Hoffa House some, and they're so concerned, if they're restricted to 5 people and somebody wants to come there, they say no.
Right.
Some of the others, I think they do 5 people until they get all their inspections, and then it's 10. And we're complaint driven, so unless somebody calls up and says, go check them, they get away with it. And I don't know what we do about that stuff. You're
But-
right, there
but
are
also,
issues.
you know-
Fortunately, most of them are in Westminster where you live, so.
The RSS, I mean, just being, truth to the fact is, it's in an area that is not surrounded
Oh, I
by
know.
a community. It's
Yep.
kind of set to the side, and and they do a great job. But you have had wanderers go into Freedom Park, and
Yep.
it's a challenge sometimes because it does make some people uncomfortable that are walking the path of freedom. At least I haven't dealt with that in a long time, but it is in a area that's set aside.
Okay.
So, yeah.
If I could ask or provide one additional clarification, there's been some discussion about conditional use and so on in the BZA process. What I'd recommend is, when you have time, take a look at section 158, 133, subsection G. That defines what the prescribed list of items that the BZA needs to look at when they're looking at a conditional use. And so there's I think a tendency to look at principal permitted, conditional, and not approved as a yes, no, maybe. Really, conditional use is a yes also. It is allowed, but there's this extra level of scrutiny, as it were, from the BZA as far as what can go there. And so there's a very prescribed list in code, and that's the section I gave you, 158, 133G, which lists what the BZA is required to look at from a conditional use perspective. So just that clarification. Welcome further discussions about what should be allowed as conditional, what should be allowed as principal permitted, and so on. But just for that clarification, it would be helpful to look at that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Yeah, just out of just for curiosity's sake, so the sort of the rule for conditional uses comes directly out of Carroll County. It was a case many years ago, Schultz versus Pritz. It was 2 funeral homes arguing with each other. I don't know what the underlying thing was, but the standard by which the Board of Zoning Appeals is judging is, sorry, this is my little legal lesson for the day, is the use that is proposed going to be worse in this zone? Is the impact, these impacts that are up here on the screen, dust, noise, traffic, etc., going to be worse in this area than elsewhere within the same zoning category? So is the impact, of a third asphalt plant in the same area, worse than if that asphalt plant were put where there aren't any other asphalt plants, for example? So that's just the way it works.
So that's an interesting point, 'cause so it looks like the final decision was to not allow those as conditional use in the act, the funeral homes, because they're not in here.
Well,
That was not an ag zone.
That was.
That was not an ag.
Oh, no,
Okay.
that was 30 years ago.
Okay,
That
but I
was
understand.
30
But I understand your
yeah.
point. It's important to note the issue of impact.
That is the whole purpose, really,
Yeah.
of the Board of Zoning.
And then it's a permitted use, you actually have to say why it can't be there.
When
as
you're the-
opposed to, it's already automatically allowed.
Basically.
Right.
It's a really low bar for the applicant to get over to prove that it should be allowed there. The burden of proof, basically based with that Schultz versus Pritz test, shifts the burden of proof to the protestants, the people who don't want it there, to prove that it should not be there, that these impacts that are listed up here are going to be worse because of some situation. That third asphalt plant within, a very close proximity to 2 others, could be worse. I mean, noise, dust, etc., for example. It's a weird example, but it's one that actually came up at one time.
And I would say from a process perspective, though, it also adds that extra layer of public involvement, public knowledge, and input, because this is a BCA hearing, is a public meeting, and then you advertise it to the surrounding neighbors and so on, so that they're aware of what's going on, so those issues can be made light to the developer, so the developer can be more conscious about what they're proposing. So,
And that's exactly what happened with the nursing
exactly,
home
yes.
situation. For right or wrong, but at least the public was very well aware, or hopefully was very well aware of the situation. Yeah.
Any other comments? I think we all have some homework to do, and maybe we can get this back on the calendar for
2
2
or 3
3
weeks. We'll get our
further-
legal team working on the question.
We go with that?
Yeah. We just want to say
Okay.
thank you to everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Everybody. Thank you.
I need now is a motion to recess and go into closed for land acquisition,
So moved.
Second.
and then adjourn after that.
So moved to adjourn after.
Second.
Okay.